Yep.
What is up? Yeah. It's been a long time, man. When it slowed down.
It has. Dad life. If you missed that window.
You missed that window. It's like, see you next week. Maybe.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Clip and I were talking about before we went live. He peeked at my hobby desk. And I got some CSM back there. As you can kind of see, that's my... Here, I'll just take this. That's my hobby space right there. Yeah. So case 1, 2, and 3 is all chaos. And behind this lamp, you can't see it. That's all orcs all the way down. So there's a lot going on over there. And then you can't even and that doesn't even fit all the orcs, because if you play orcs a lot, you'll end up with just these nonsense vehicles that take up a lot of room. Those all live, except for the rigs, because the rigs I don't want to break because they have a bunch of stuff hanging off them. They have a bunch of infantry hanging off them. But besides the rigs, all my vehicles just live in cardboard boxes in the garage. So all the buggies, all the battle wagons, all the trucks, they're just in a box. They're not even wrapped or packaged or anything. They're just sitting on top of each other, and boxes closed, keep the dust off, and they're just in the garage. Because orc vehicles are weird, because orc vehicles, any particular orc vehicle, I feel only becomes meta once a year tops. So you don't need to have them on hand all the time.
Yeah, you want to be ready when it's time, though.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be ready. But if a buggy is meta in 2020 and then it gets nerfed, you're kind of okay, see you in 2024.
In the new edition, when you get a new codex.
Yeah, that's just how when they put orc vehicles away, they put them away for a while. Yeah. So what's up with you, man? What have you been up to? What have you been up to? It's
man,
had a couple weeks, winter break.
Yeah, winter break's coming up. That's fun. I fortunately also get winter break, but that winter break, so I get to don't have to find a part-time nanny or anything for my sons who are going to be out of school. So that's cool. The end of the season for us turns into a lot of there's a lot of fundraisers and travel. I've randomly had to travel for work more than I have in the past year. Maybe in the last 2 months, people are starting to pick it up a little bit. And then there's just been like tonight, my wife is out at a fundraising dinner. It's just I can't go to that, or else we're not going to get the show going until the second week of January. But have fun, do the good things, spend the money on the good people, all that good stuff. Necron Codex came out. That's dope. Monoliths maybe one, super fun.
That looks like a good book.
Yeah, man. Listen, so I took a look. When the Hypercrypt Legion rules got previewed, people were sort of shitting on the release, and I was I don't know, if you can move things with no caveats whenever you feel like it, that's always good. Always.
The first thing I thought of when I saw that, I was like that Glocktopus idiot.
Yeah.
Locust, and then heavy locust. I'm I don't like the idea of any of those just showing up in my backfield at any given time.
You are welcome. The Hexmark Destroyer is gonna be crazy. So yeah, I think that book's really deep, and I think that I think I said this in the Discord, but half the reason why I think just reading it, if you're proficient in Warhammer, you're oh yeah, this book has a lot going on. But there's also the backup evidence of quite skilled players coming to wildly different conclusions about different units and different legions in that book, which is probably a good sign that there's probably multiple play styles that are viable, given what your approach is and given your skill level. So I'm pretty excited about it.
We saw that happen with the last balance pass. People, so we all knew that Custodes, 1,000 Sons of Imperial Knights got hammered, and then Elves got hit too, but they didn't get hit as hard as everything else. We're well, that's going to be a problem because the big stuff keeping Eldar in check has gotten hit.
Yep.
People knew people knew CSM were good, but it was mostly kind of Anthony and a couple others playing them, and Anthony was really leaning hard on the Abaddon plus 10 Terminator brick, supported by independent strong shooting platforms, double forge fiend, double obliterators. And then people also thought that Necrons were actually going to be a problem because so many armies had gotten hit that people thought that Necrons were just going to retain their durability and be unsolvable. That actually ended up not being the case. Like Necrons just like fell off the face of the planet, and then out of nowhere, people innovated the CSM list. Liam VSL, but others too. But Liam was probably like the first to really perfect it, and he went. I remember seeing Innis buying a bunch of Chaos Lords too around that time before LG. I know Innis and Liam, and I know people were talking.
Yeah.
But the Chaos Lord spam plus Chosen, who had gotten a points cut, people were really kind of like leading into that, and they were just dropping Abaddon the Terminators, but people weren't really talking about CSM. Everyone was hyper focused on Necrons, and like I said, it was just a lot of really well-known players were just flat out wrong. Necrons just fell off the face of the earth. So yeah, like a lot of people do know what they're talking about, but sometimes you're just kind of reading the tea leaves a little bit, and sometimes it just doesn't play out. It's too many factors.
Mm-hmm. And CSM, it seemed to coincide with the simultaneous realization across a bunch of different players in different countries of like, oh yeah, like multiple squads inside a single transport jamming objectives is like gaming. And people were taking that and translating it out across the different factions.
Exactly. It's like we were talking about it the other week, so my locals, and just how outside of Eldar who were just playing their own game. And then like Chaos Knights, obviously, who are, can't do that. They're just vehicle spam. But a lot of the armies are running the archetype of hammers and or mission playing trash nonsense in transports backed up by either indirect or mobile shooting, or if it's not mobile, it's long range shooting that can come out of reserves and get angles at the end of a long firing lane and use their range to keep safe. Like Forge Fiends. Forge Fiends are not mobile. They're not fast, but they're 36 inches. And that's actually kind of a rare break point. A lot of the really relevant shooting platforms right now are 24 inches. So to be able to be 36, you should come out in our reserves, especially like a lot of GW boards, like that top left objective. There's a really good firing lane that goes across 3 objectives on several layouts. And you can't really walk a Forge Fiend up there, but you can absolutely bring a Forge Fiend out of reserves. And now it just gets to look across 3 objectives. And if someone has a 24-inch unit and they're not pushing up aggressively enough, well, you get to shoot at them. They don't get to shoot back.
Yep.
And you get to use the threat of Chosen and Chaos Lords and Rhinos to push them out of that range bracket. So it's very strong.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
You're seeing Death Guard do the same thing with the Plague Burst Crawlers plus the 30 Plague Marines and 3 Rhinos. Tau do it a little bit, where they have like the Breacher Fish pushing up, which the Breacher Fish package is fantastic. That's
so
a fantastic
cheap,
unit.
It's so cheap for its output and durability.
Yeah, and then like they push you out, and of course Tau backed that up with shooting because they are the shooting faction. What else is doing it? CSM is obviously doing it. Black Templars do it fantastic. Black Templars are the Imperial CSM.
Yes,
People aren't really talking about that faction enough. When you have the Gladius Black Templars, where they just pop, the finest hour on the captains, and they use a lance strap for they get lance and extra AP, and then you have Hellbricked, attached to the Sword Brethren, and like you use Gladius to fancy charge that unit, and now that whole unit has lethal 5s with rerolls and does mortals on the charge and is +1 damage. You're just like,
yeah, it's
so insane.
It's wild. Just as
it still has space range to back it up.
Yeah. As a quick heads up, if you're Black Templars running Gladius Task Force, you've got a win rate of 65% and overrep of 1.3. 20% of you are going 4-0 to start your events, but no event wins yet. I think people are doing similar stuff in Ironstorm and just like riding the math out to victory.
Yep. Yeah, you can totally do it. But Black Templars with Gladius, I am super scared of that list because it is I don't want to say it's stronger than CSM. It's not. But I personally haven't figured out that matchup yet with any of the armies I play. So, whereas CSM is like that people are starting to like learn how to play into that now. And so even though it's like a really good army, you're kind of like, okay, well, if you're getting a lot of reps into good people playing that army, then when you go to an event and you pair into someone and you know the matchup better than they know. If you know your matchup into them better, they know the matchup into you, and you've been playing against someone who plays it well, and then they play it suboptimally, those little openings become very obvious. You can kind of capitalize on that. Whereas Black Templars, I just don't have enough reps into that, and people just aren't talking about it a lot. So that matchup still scares me.
Yeah, it's bad. As captains hit hard, like it's a whole thing. I think CSM might actually be the best performing faction in the game right now.
I think they are, because they just have good matchups in everyone. Which is like, even though Eldar, like rules wise, is probably the best faction, CSM are close second. I think CSM just has probably better matchups across the board, and they have so much pivot room too with the allies and everything like that. And like Eldar are kind of like getting real close to like the Votan problem in 9th edition, where it's like if they take one more point hit, though they actually like might fall below the critical mass of units like you need to play an actual game of Warhammer, you know. And at that point, no one on your side of the table is having fun. And then you had to bring like you had to like bring like the actually bad units. I mean, a lot of their units are good, but a lot of their units that are like down like kind of like the B tier and C tier of that codex are good units, but also like, you know,
can't
open them up to the realm of like yeah, well, they like now it's like they're good until they play into like triple Playburst Crawler or like, you know, 13 War Dogs with all Havoc launchers or like a Imperial Guard. And that could be more this could be more of like, hey, newsflash, indirect is bad for the game. But, you know, the pivots that they're going to take are really, really don't like indirect, more so than most factions.
But Tim, we're supposed to be able to fix everything with points costs.
I mean, people aren't talking about it because like because we look at share screen. So we look at this and we're like, I don't know if can you guys see my mouse when I do this?
Yeah.
Okay. So people were like, yeah, look at this. This game is actually pretty balanced. Look at this World Eaters, World Eaters through Gene Store Cult, kind of a good spot. And these guys here, pushing up a little bit. Let me drop the veterans out of here. Okay, so now it's looking really, oh man, all these guys fell off that edge of a cliff. But it's looking pretty healthy once we actually drop the players who know what they're doing out of this. The thing is, though, is like let's go through this like line by line. All right, Eldari playing with about 1,600 points worth of stuff because they have too many rolls. Chaos Space probably playing with about 2,150, 2,200 points worth of stuff.
Yeah.
Leagues of Votan playing with like 2,400 points worth of stuff. Black Templars probably actually playing with a solid 2,000, maybe 2,100 points. They just have rules.
Here's where these like the drill downs become really handy. It's like if you drill down into the Black Templar detachments, that set of performance is being like hard dragged down by like suboptimal choices by a lot of people. Right?
Yeah.
So
and it's not even like too bad. Like
48
for your lowest percent is not bad, but it's masking the 65 of these that look at this, man.
It's crazy. That's crazy.
Absolutely insane. World Eaters, they got some point cuts. I actually think World Eaters are probably like right where they need to be points wise. World Eaters are just kind of forcing people to screen again, which I am surprised. But they also, you have to screen, but you can't screen too much. Because if you screen too much, they kill one screen, consolidate into another one, you fail a leadership check, and now you have an unshootable World Eaters army sitting in no man's land.
Yay.
Which is obviously bad. Yay. So there is World Eaters punish mistakes very hard. But I don't think if you're running the 1975 list, I think Angron's like 400 something points. 8-bound are like what, like 45, 50 points. Like nothing is like undercosted, you know. Even the I don't know what is a Corn Berserker, like 19? 18, I know it's not lower than 18 points. It's like 18 or 19 points, you know, which is pretty typical for like attack marine equivalent. Saritas are absolutely playing with like 2,400 points. Like I don't even think if you take 30 Arcoflagellants and 3 Exorcists, I don't even think that's more than 900 points. I think that's less than 900
you're
points.
Basically still, you're playing with like 2,000 points of other models on top of that, essentially. Arcos are so cheap.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Arcos are insanely cheap, and they with two wounds and a film of pain, they functionally have 4 wounds apiece. And then like if you pop go to ground and miracle dice on top of them as well, it's just like you're having to like shoot like anti-tank weapons to remove these idiots one at a time. Space Wolves, I don't actually have enough rep into Space Wolves, but you can see here that it's kind of they're doing some stuff with Stormlands, Gladius, Firestorm up higher, Ironstorm pretty decent, so not too surprised. Champions of Rust down here at the bottom of the trash where it belongs. Death Guard are like they got some love, but they're totally playing with more than 2,000 points. I just put so much trash on the table that punches above its weight, you know, and it's my list. It feels like I'm playing with a 2,200 point list, which is why it's so strong. I just never run out of stuff.
Spam undercosted output, big brain in it.
Yeah, exactly. I am surprised to see Thousand Suns doing so well here, but it's only 2% meta rep, which anything below 3%, you know, usually means that there's like it's just not being played by a lot of people. Because I think if you take it's like 26 factions of the game, if you divide all 26 factions, their share of the pie equally, I think it comes out to like 3% or close to it.
Yeah, it should be 3.
So yeah, so anything like 2% or below, it just means it's going to be very swingy because it's below the average or below the mean. Let's see, and then after that we start getting kind of into real stuff. I know Dungeons Mechanicus are putting a lot of stuff on the table just outside of creatures. They don't do damage. I think that's new with the new book. Tal Empire putting a lot of stuff on the table. Orcs are very good, but again, they're putting a lot of stuff on the table.
Is Tal's underperformance? I haven't checked this specific matchup, but like I'm always surprised at how low their numbers have been relative to what my perception of the strength of that book is. I wonder whether that's specific to the matchups by the 2 most common factions.
I think it's more to do with the detachment than the matchup. They don't have a way to push people off objectives early, reliably into most of the matchups in the field. That's the main thing. If you can tank the damage they have on the field, and if they reserve any of their damage dealing units, like a lot of times they'll reserve like they'll have 2 crisis units and they'll reserve one of them. And if you have reps into that matchup and you're like, okay, well, I can tank this. And you push them, if you push them hard aggressively, that's why they like the Breacher Fish, because it kind of slows you down a little bit. But if you can push into them, turn 3 is a long time to wait for your army to turn on, especially if you've been taking heavy losses and losing a lot of ground. So I really think it's just the fact that they have a Callion detachment instead of a Monko detachment, or something that's a little more flexible for the early game.
Woof.
So that's a big part of it.
Yeah. Just to back up your point there, they are 33% into Eldar and 38% into CSM, 39% into World Eaters, 35% into Sisters.
Pizza Bagels brings up a good point too. Everyone gets a free 20 and fix too. Yeah, if you just take homers and bring it down, it's because they're the best units they have that give them like sticking power to the table are all vehicles. You know, and it's like, and it's not tough vehicles. It's like small vehicles that would be heavy infantry in any other book.
Yeah. So whack.
Yeah, it's a little bit rough, but it's just when you're a melee only army like World Eaters or like a lot of orc builds, you can still push people off primary. When you're a shooting only army, it's much harder to do that because to push people off primary, you have to put models. They have to leave you space for you to land on their objectives. You have to push models up into there. Then you have to shoot them off 100%, you can't leave wounded stuff or like stuff alive, otherwise you're risking getting tagged or wrapped, or charged, that kind of stuff. And then you need to have enough shooting pointed at those guns to be like pointed at those objectives where the threat of your shooting keeps them from stepping on those objectives. There's just too many ways around that, especially with activation locking or stuff like that. Whereas with melee, you can just like World Eaters, you can just stage, you can activation lock, you can sticky the objective when you fall off it. That's another thing. Like Tau hates stuff with sticky objectives. Like that is rough. And then whereas World Eaters, you can sticky objectives in the open, so you only have to give away one unit for it, and it's like, okay, well now it's stickied. Now I don't have to put anything else in there until you come take it away, and then I'll just repeat it. And then they can stage stuff behind walls, and then just their threat range. They're like, okay, well if you stand that objective, you will die. Whereas Tau can't do that. They have to get stuff in the open. So it's a lot of little things, but I think a huge part of it is just the fact that their army doesn't turn on to turn 3, and that's just too long.
Just missed the 2 most important turns of the game. It's fine.
Yeah. Hopefully when they get their I think when their book comes out, it'll solve a lot of issues. A lot of issues. Who knows? I don't have any insider info, but I have heard rumors of them getting Vespid kill team, which they're gonna probably get some new rules or something like that, some sort of love there. That'll help. They've been pretty good about giving at least every single codex like at least one new model to play with, which will be nice. They get some points love and they get some detachments. I think a vodka detachment would be huge.
That'd be huge
for that army.
Access to not even good post combat, but like moderately useful would be like do something with the recruit data sheet to like make it good at killing trash.
Tau have more data sheets people realize. It's just there's so many data sheets that you don't realize they have because they're just not worth bringing. So I agree with you. Like it doesn't have to be good melee, but it could be like my trash beats up your trash. Yeah. Like that sort of thing.
Tau, what up, Alex?
Yeah, Alex, what's up, man? So that's actually kind of a good semi-good segue when we're talking about the meta stuff. Cliff, talk to me about what you've been doing. You published an Elo article on Goonhammer, and I saw it got posted cross posted to Reddit, and of course there were comments. I'm like, you did. I don't think you read the article, man. Like some of the comments, they're not as bad as I thought, but I was just kind of like, bro, like that was clearly answered in the article.
Yeah, I know. It is funny, it's not. It's funny for me because I come like my professional background involves writing a lot of like op-eds, like ghostwriting a lot of op-eds and like political commentary things. And like it's pretty standard practice to anticipate the critique and then answer the critique immediately so that people look like fools when they provide the critique you answered. And there are a lot of folks the comments that I saw that were down on Elo broadly were very specific about Elo as a system driving choices for players that choices that players would rather not make because they're not interested in running like the most competitive stuff. They're interested in running like, fluffy stuff, which I'm like, cool. I too love running fluffy stuff and meme lists. And also like that will not result in good Elo things because Elo measures winning. It measures your ability.
Like you can if you want to make yourself feel better, you can just tell yourself that like, hey, just because my Elo is not high doesn't necessarily mean I'm bad. Like if I'm just trolling every single event, my Elo is going to be low, and then like, but you can like
that's okay.
And you can still be good. Like you just don't. But also like if you don't care about Elo, then like why do you care about things that affect your Elo?
Right, which means you actually do care about Elo.
You actually do care about it. You just want to not get exposed for any nonsense.
Right. I do think it's fair though, right? Like, there are a lot of like it would be easy to look at a single data point and say like there's no way that this single data point fully encapsulates like the wide nuance inherent to like playing and winning a Warhammer 40k game. And you're like, yes, except we assume that winning the game contains all of the things that you're talking about. Like all of that information informs someone's ability to win. So the more they play, the better we get it. Like better the system becomes. It measuring that. Shout out to Jeremy for one, putting it in place, and then two, doing work behind the scenes now to get it even better and more accurate through like a decay development process. It's going to be nasty. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of work, and it's definitely we're definitely seeing people, kind of like slowly adopt it, which is kind of cool. Which is reminder, Lewis Betancourt, if you're watching this, I haven't forgotten about you. We still got to reach out to you. He reached out to us. He's one of our local TOs. He's in the Tampa area. And he's already talked about how he thinks that Evo is kind of going to be like the way of the future, and it's slowly going to replace ITC points.
Yeah, I think that's true.
We're seeing less and less support for ITC points every single year. I think it was kind of started as a way to encourage people to get to go events, and it's just kind of become this big like albatross that like FLG doesn't want to deal with anymore. So, and it shows. But so yeah, one, if you don't care about Elo, like it doesn't factor in RTTs just because the Elo data is slaved from the data we used for the meta dashboard. And it's a workload thing. Two, there's just so much nonsense that happens in RTT. We don't think that data is actually insightful. And three, it kind of leaves RTTs as like a safe spot where you can like relax and like play like a fun list or more meme list or experiment and stuff like that, and not feel like you're getting like punished for it. Also, like there's like BCP accounts are free, so there's nothing stopping you from just like making up like a new moniker or alias or something like that and be like, this is my meme account, and then you just run like nonsense under someone else's name and a different email. Like there's nothing stopping you from doing that.
Shit. That makes me people aren't doing that for the 5 bands. I was like, oh man, that makes me wonder how many people are doing that. We're like not accounting for the fact that one person may have like 6 different accounts going.
I mean, the one guy in rural Australia was for sure doing that. But besides that, that's my favorite 40K story of all
This is a totally legit event. Definitely not fake.
I love that story. But yeah, I don't think we're seeing, and for the most part, like the people that really do care were like one of my buddies. He actually reached out to Jeremy, and I put Jeremy and him in touch because his employer is very nosy about when he's using personal time and stuff like that. So 2 years ago, he changed a year or two ago. He changed his BCP name or account to a different one, so that way when he like podiumed or won events, he wouldn't just like show up as like searchable, because a lot of times, they might have been using personal time, might have been, using that personal time to go to events, and it's just easier to not have your name like be searchable when that happens, especially if you're doing well and your name is going on Blood of Kittens and Goonhammer and this and that.
Hidden Google.
Exactly.
That's cool.
But he did reach out. He did reach out and asked us to merge his name. So I assume that anyone that really cares would like reach out to us and ask for like their names to get merged, which is something we can do.
Yeah. And if you are in fact one of those people who cares about that sort of thing, you want to make sure that that's happening, reach out to us because we're happy to attempt to correct it. That's what we do. One of the big advantages I think that Elo has over ITC or really any other system is that like it's just transparent. Like formula is out there. It's the one that we're using. You can look it up. If you're really intense about it, you could collect all the data, rerun all the numbers yourself, and like hopefully get the same answers. Pretty sure. Jeremy and I just spent like an hour behind the scenes leading up to the show, like trading Python code to make sure we were live.
In different Discords, someone actually posted up. Someone again who didn't read the article was like, "Is there any word on Elo, counting for teams?" And it's like, well,
did you read it?
Your version of like we talked about in the article, like your job in teams might be to just like lose small weekend long, and it's like Elo is produced by like win-loss and like the likelihood that you were going to win or lose, and if you buck that trend or not. So it's like it doesn't really work with teams. I did, however, like a follow-up suggestion someone else said, where they basically said, is there a way that we could maybe look at implementing a slower rate of decay if that person is active in team events? I'm like that, and Jeremy was there too, and we were both like, that's actually that's
a good idea. Yeah, that's right.
I like that a lot because you are active. You are like in the scene, but you're not like actively going out to singles events. but you're not like someone who just like hibernated for like a year and you woke up and you have no idea what's going on.
There is also a universe where, like, I mean, this would assume way more transparency into team data, in some sort of platform that would like digitally collect everyone's predicted performance in a given matchup, and then also record their actual performance, so you get differences between predicted and actual, and classify those as like wins, losses, or draws, and then you could adjust it based on the degree of win, loss, or draw versus their expected, and then you could produce an elo score for teams that would reward somebody for losing small when otherwise an average player might lose big. But none of those tools,
that sounds crazy intense,
super intense, and none of those tools exist right now. So
yeah, exactly. You'd have to like build that from the ground up.
Yeah. That would be cool though. Yeah, because if you're somebody like Typhus, for example, like he's not out here playing 10 GTs a year, but dude's an absolute killer. So like. It would be. I'm sure his elo is not reflective, in fact, of like where he's at in competitive.
No, of course not. It's funny when those people who like are underrepresented, when they play, you get to see them like shoot up, like 200 points in this. Like after 2 events, they shoot up like 200 points because they just like beat everyone.
Just smash. Did that happen WCW with a couple of people?
Oh yeah, it happened with several people. Because you get that cross-pollination of metas because if you're just playing your local meta, and even if you're top dog in your local meta, and like let's say your elo is like 1700, 1800, 1900, you're not really getting paired against the people at like 1200, 1300, whatever. Like actually, those people are actually pretty rare. Like those are the people who like show up to like a GT and like they play like one GT or one major, like an FLG event, and then they just disappear off the face of the earth. We never see them again. They just come in, they lose 6 games in a row, and they're like, that was fun, and then we just never see those again. Even the biggest skill disparity games I've played, like the other player has been ranked like mid 1400s or something like that. So like if you're sitting there farming your local population, like you are still getting like real notable like elo gains just from beating up the same people over and over and over again, and then when new people come in, they're ranked 1500. If you're ranked at 1900 and you beat a 1500 person, you're still getting like a not insubstantial boost, especially if you're going to a lot of events. What happens though is you take all the elo and you load it up. You load up you're like, I'm gonna go to Worlds. You load up your backpack with your clothes, your toothbrush, and your underwear. You load up your army, and then there's an invisible bag where you load up all your elo. And what you don't realize is that there's another guy coming from fucking like Poland who's about to take all that back home with him.
That bag with
your army, your army and your clothes are coming back with you. Your elo is going home with him to Europe. So, and that's basically what happened. And it's kind of cool when we see these cross-pollination events happen. We're going to see that, I think, as WTC and teams and get more and more popular, and we start seeing more people going over to UKTC events, more people from America start going to Warmaster GT, and we have these cross-pollination opportunities. I think that's going to be like really cool, And then that works the other way too. Like the Americans who are a little bit underrated, and they go over there and they beat some guy from like the UK or Poland or something like that, like they're going to get a big shot in the arm, So that is something I really like, and that you alluded to it in the article about how the system is a little bit self-correcting by design, which I love because naturally as people in the data set quit or move on to different hobbies or stuff like that or whatever, we're going to see inflation in the elo. Like 2100 is going to become the new 2000. In a couple of years, 2300 is going to become the new 2100. So decay helps a little bit there, but also having these cross-pollination events where we see these massive, changing of hands of the accumulated elo in the system. It's almost like an economy where the money doesn't get destroyed; it just changes hands. It's pretty interesting to follow.
I think the thing to remember if you're, because I think there's some people who have like legitimate legitimately grounded concerns about elo inflation, and like you were saying, the ability of somebody to like just grind out their local meta for like 3 to 5 point hits, but like do it 10 times.
Yeah.
The thing to remember is that like it's really the differential that you're worried most about. Like, what is the difference in elo rating between two players? Because that's the thing that actually contains information about the probability of a given player winning or losing. And the like values all collectively inflating over time is like still a thing, but not as much of a thing given the assumption that like they're all raising at roughly the same rate.
Yeah, like I think if I'm following what you're saying, it's like, well, if someone is, let's say someone's at 2,000 now, and someone like Manny Chima is at 2,100.
Yeah.
And there is possibility where like a year or two in the future, you could have Manny Chima's now at 2,300 and someone at 2,000. And it's not that 2,000 got worse. It's just that maybe we just have more granularity, between the ranks.
Yeah.
And you can definitely see it. You'll hear global elo.
There's both that and like you're 2,100 now, and in a year you're 2,200, but you maybe have not necessarily like changed your actual player skill. If the same player, if you're at 21 and somebody else is 2,000, and then in a year you're 22 and they're 21, you have the same relative player skill. Like the probability of a given outcome in that game has not changed for either person.
Yeah, you can see a little bit here too. Like as you get into like the 1900s, 1900s is actually a little bit small. But the 1800s, and down to the 1700s, where like this is most people that you think of as good players are kind of like here in the 1700 bracket actually. And you can see there's a huge amount of granularity. Like look at this, like starting from Robin Roberts, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people that are like separated by decimal points. We can see it a little bit again here. 2 people at like, got 40, 45.7, 45.7, 45.0, 44.3, 44.1, 43.6. I don't know why these two swap places. 43.4. Like you can just kind of like see it, like where it's just mere decimal points are separating people. And right now those are decimal points. But 2 years in the future, those might actually be due to the inflation. Those actually might separate to being like, like 5 actual whole number points apart. Yeah. So that'll be interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm. It'll be cool. Do you know? I wonder where do you think the GW staff are in here? Because I know they've hit up a couple of GT Plus events. One of the interesting things now we've got it. Like
I would imagine they're probably in the 1,500 to like 1,400. Yep. Because they're not. The thing is, like a lot of those guys have played, but like not a lot, and they tend to go even or they tend to go slightly negative. And if you played if you played 2 GTs in the past 2 years and you went negative at both, your
sub 15.
Your elo is just not going to be that high. Like whether it's accurate is a whole nother discussion, but it's just not going to be very high because the less games you have, the more volatile each game is for your ranking.
Yep. One of the things I wanted to look at now that we've got individual elo scores now assigned to the end of every game for every player in our data set, which is really cool. That gives us the ability in the future, this will be like another dashboard update, which will be tight, to bracket out on a like per events attended basis or a per games played basis, like what the elo distributions look like within that. And that'll be super interesting. As well, just I'm excited to see where the bulk of people are at, because I think there's a visualization here where you just do a line chart, show the growth over time, and it's just gonna be a whole lot of us sitting in the ocean and a whole lot of sharks jumping up out of it with their 1,800 plus ratings.
That wouldn't be a bad idea for something in the future where you just have like a bell curve graph or something like that, where you just literally show like where everyone is, and you just show like the vast majority of us are like living in that kind of like 1,400 to 1,600 kind of area, and then like there's a steep curve up as you get to the 1,700s, and I mean the people that are like 1,800, 2,100 is like narrow,
tiny,
very narrow.
3 standard deviations beyond. Should be cool.
Speaking of events, not the cleanest segue, but I'll talk about Warzone Atlanta a little bit. Yeah, that was a fun time. I went up with a couple people from my local. Mark Parker, he was running Necrons. Reggie Sanchez running AdMech. Ruben Fernandez running Orcalist. That we've been iterating on fine tuning his show because he did very well. And Danny Sanchez, who's Reggie Sanchez's son, he was running Firestorm Space Marines, just all the good stuff, and then he was just sprinkled on Firestorm, so it just did a ton of damage.
Love it.
And then also our buddy Brian, I'm not going to use his last name because he's the guy who uses the alternate name, so I have no idea if he was supposed to be at that event or not, but he took World Eaters. And it was good. So yeah, it was like 6 of us. That's and cool. So one, I got to say that it's been a while since I've been up to Atlanta, and even though that town is fun, that airport is awful. And I also didn't really pay close attention to where the event was because I was definitely surprised by like the 40-minute Uber ride from the airport to the venue. I'm like, it was up in like Marietta, so it was like clear on the other. It was clear on the other side from the airport. I'm like, oh, this is rough. Yeah. The hotel was pretty decent. The hotel it was kind of quiet. There was it was located next to a lot of good stuff. It was totally just have like a boys trip though because I got in late. I went in a little bit later than everyone else just because I wanted to take advantage of like having the time off everything. So I had the full Thursday off. I caught a late night flight Thursday night.
Type.
I got in like real late, around like midnight or something like that. But I got to spend the entire day with the family, which was nice and relaxing. And then the next day played 2 rounds. One of them was on stream against World Eaters for both of them. So I played World Eaters and then I played World Eaters again. That was nice. Especially because I have a lot of reps in the World Eaters, both against World Eaters and as World Eaters. So that was great because I don't neither one of those players.
Funny guy.
Yeah, neither one of them had they definitely had less reps in the DG than I had in their army. So so round 1, we actually played this wrong. It was vital ground, but we just totally zoned out because they sent out an email saying what the missions were from the packet, but I didn't realize they had a separate packet for the War Masters Challenge. So I guess I'm gonna rewind this. I do like how Warzone Atlanta structures their event. I think it's really cool. Basically, you pay, the ticket is kind of expensive, but you get a really nice catered lunch in the middle of it. The lunch is really good, like really good food, like chicken parmesan, fried chicken, sweet tea, rolls, all sorts of different sides, it was really, really, really nice catered lunch. That was awesome. But it's only five rounds, and the prize support and the support and the trophies, everything are awesome. But then you can pay $25 more, and you basically get to opt to what we jokingly call a tryhard bracket, which is 2 games on Friday before the event. And basically, if you don't opt into those games, you get 2 hidden losses added onto your your win path or your wins amount or whatever. So that way, round 1 of Saturday, all the people that went into the War Masters Challenge,
right,
whatever the record is, tacked onto the GT.
Right.
Everyone else is basically going to be showing 0 and 2, but it's hidden on BCP.
Yeah.
You win your first round, but you were in the tryhard bracket. You'll be 1 and 2.
1 and 2.
You show up. If you show up for just the Saturday and Sunday and you go undefeated, your win path will still show loss, and then 5 wins.
Right.
Which kind of caps you. And then they also do opponent game win percentage, which was kind of normally I don't love, but it kind of worked out in my favor because I went 4 and 3 and I still ended up 13th. So that was awesome.
Love it.
And
good job, team's opponents.
Ruben went 4 and 3 as well and ended up right below me at 14th. So that was good. But anyhow, anyhow, long story short, I got way off base here. So I opened up my email because my opponent was like, "What? There's no packet here. What mission are we doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I got the email right here. Let me look it up." And it just said round 1, and it was like take and hold or whatever, something like that. And we got the deployment right, but apparently everyone else was playing Vital Ground, and we were just playing like take and hold. So, and like the TO comes by, and I kind of put this on them a little bit because they only had like 2 judges there, the TO and someone else, but they were also manning the front desk, which was like outside the room, so they didn't catch it till round 4, and they're like, "Why do you have a center objective?" I'm like, "We're not supposed to." And then we look around, no one else did. We're like, "Oops." But also, it's like if you had more judges and TOs, you would have caught this like way faster.
Yeah. Or like, more clarity in the initial communications.
More clarity in the packet, stuff like that, but it is what it is. I think they're under new management and there's some stuff they're trying to work through. It was still overall like a very, very good event. Awesome. I liked it a lot. I'll definitely try to go back if I can. Played World Eaters. He didn't really know what Death Guard did. Like I explained it to him. I was like, "Hey man, the big thing, if you don't remember anything else, this unit has fight first and I can grenade 4 times in a turn." Once like these characters, like what I'm like, if you don't remember anything else, like please remember that, because like nothing else the army does is really gotcha. It just puts too much stuff on the table and it hits a little harder than it should. And then just the endless waves of crap that was hitting too hard for its points cost, like just eventually kind of dragged him down. And also, it's just like I'm so used to playing against Anthony, where he pushes up. And then turn 2, he just closes the noose.
Mm-hmm.
And then like turn 3, if you're still moving, he just closes the noose again, and then the game ends. And like this guy, he used to be on Brohammer with me, and I never got a chance to play against him before. But I knew he was a competent player. But he'd recently had a kid, so he kind of like had taken a break. He was kind of getting back into it, and so. I think he was just trying to do like the missile trading thing, and it's just you just can't missile trade with Death Guard. Like they just have too much stuff, and you'll missile trade for like some Nurglings or like a Rhino, and they'll just kill whatever came over. And they'll be like, "Great, I'm still scoring a 90. What are you gonna do about it?" My stream opponent, same thing. I was a little bit overstimulated in this game because I played on stream before, but I was a little bit tired. I was just kind of off this entire event.
Yeah.
Joe's table has a lot of like little extra things going on that I'm not that like every stream table is different. Every stream table is different, but this one had like a little extra stuff going on. And honestly, I probably should just put my phone in airplane mode because in addition to trying to give my opponent like a decent above board game, play my stuff. My phone was just constantly blowing up, like while I was like notifications would be coming down like while I was like trying to like check the app for stuff. I'm trying to do the scoring in the ITC Battles app because I don't really trust Joe's scoreboard, because it's like it's got some stuff and I don't really want to try to like dig under the hood of someone else's like scoring apparatus, you know what I mean? Although I just took fixed, my opponent had way more of a harder time because he was doing tactical. And once you start discarding cards or holding cards, it gets like way complicated. And then there's like normally where I put all my stuff, there's like rails there where the camera moves. I have to use someone else's die. It was just all sorts of things. It was just kind of like I said. The best term I could use for it is just like overstimulated.
Yeah.
But that was a good game. When Angron was coming back, I tried to make a play where I just exploded the Rhinos and the Plague Marines outwards, try to like screen him way out and maybe draw some of his resources back towards his home objective. And then I was looking through the app and I was like, "Oh, I did this wrong. The Desperate Escape temp is done before the vehicle moves, not afterwards." So luckily, it was still my movement phase. So I was like, "Hey, I don't want to get roasted on Reddit on Monday morning, run out of town. I've spent way too much
comments going crazy.
Yeah, I've spent way too many dollar dues on like models to like get run out of this hobby. So like, do you mind if we like fix it? It's still in the phase. I was like, but I was very careful to fix it in a way that only hurt myself, not him. I was like, look, I'll eat the loss of 2 Rhinos and like 6 dead Plague Marines and 2 battle shocked units like on the chin Just let me put these
To make
two battle shock units back where they're here. Yeah, so I basically lost like 3 plague greens from one unit, 2 plague greens from another unit. They were both battle shocked, and I lost 2 full health rhinos, or almost full health rhinos, for no reason at all.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, I was like, but I had so much of my army. Like, I just had so much stuff in my army because he was trying to do the thing where he was just like trying to missile enemy, and I was just waiting for that big, huge, like army wide knockout punch. That you really need to do as world years, it just never came. He just kind of like let me sit on 3 objectives while he sat on 2, and he was just sitting there like just getting scammed on cards. And meanwhile, he was just sending one. He was literally sending in one character at a time when I took assassinate homing. So I'm just kind of like, okay, thanks for the points.
Yeah. Was he? I know you said he was like just had a baby. He was coming back to the game. Was this like his?
That was the first opponent. The first opponent.
Okay.
I'm talking about the stream game. The stream game, although they did kind of do similar things where they were just like missiling stuff, but the first round opponent was running a more. I don't know if it was the 1975 list, but it was extremely close. If it wasn't, it might have been like Jack's list with a chaos spawn or something like that. But it was very much a meta list. Whereas like the round 2 game, that guy was running just MSU Exalted, which don't really they missile trade. They would missile trade, except he was attaching a character to them. And I took assassinate, so they weren't actually even trading. He was like sending them into rhinos and like not killing the rhinos, and then I was getting assassinate and primary. So
yeah,
little bit rough for him.
It's hard.
Yeah. Also, the funny thing is, the TO came up to me afterwards, and like I guess like at some point, like because I overwatched early with the drone, and I guess like someone thought I overwatched with the rhino with firing deck, and I even said on stream, I'm like, you can't do that. Also, they're like nothing near the rhinos had taken damage. It was like clearly over by the drone. And like the TO came to me the next day. He's like, "Hey, by the way, someone on stream wanted to let you know you can't overwatch the rhino like firing deck." I'm like, "Thanks."
Like, good story, bro.
I'm like, I literally have not done that all that, but okay. I like to remind people to breathe every once in a while also when they're on stream.
Yeah. Go touch grass. Every now and then I can see why Joe's like, nah, I'm not trying to like fuck with the stream comments because they're just off a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think there's sometimes where like I agree and disagree with his no interference kind of policy.
Oh,
but
yeah.
I think overall it's probably for the best.
Yeah.
I do like how
a neutral stance is probably the way to go.
I do like how sometimes he clarifies when people are getting like a little bit too pitchforky in the comments. Though he tamps down on that real quick, which is definitely appreciated. But yeah, that was day 1, and then the most important about day 1 is where we went to dinner that night, and we went to a place called Papado's, whatever. It was a Cajun place.
Ooh.
And we rang up like a $750 tab or bill, but we just got so much booze and so much seafood. We ordered like 7 different appetizers, and like we got really nice dishes, and then
all the gumbo,
and then and then we got coffee for the table afterwards. Like a few of us actually like went in. We're like, screw it, let's go. We got desserts too, which is not normally something we like most of us do at dinner or whatever. And then we did it like the grown up way when the bill came, or we literally just each of us we just put 6 credit cards in. And we're just like just split it. We're not going to itemize all that.
Yeah.
Day 2. Trying to remember so day 2 I paired into Nick Keever, a good friend of mine. He was playing Votan. I think that's who I paired into round 1. And it's gonna bother me. I'm gonna look it up while I talk.
6 Sags.
But yeah, he was running the Sagitar list, and I played into it. I don't think I played into it as Death Guard, but I was familiar with what they did. So I knew a little bit what was going on. I think I could have definitely played this better, and it ended up being like a very close loss, 93-91. Because we both had like just so much stuff. We were just like throwing it at each other. And basically it got really close near the end where I kept I'd sticky 3 of the objectives. And then there was a big ruin that was solid right next to the objective. And I had the fight first brick in there, and I was just holding the CP to heroic intervene on it. And then he basically kind of just took the heroic intervention on the chin at the very end, but he still ended up winning. But that has actually been really strong. It's like heroically intervening that fight first unit. But it was just the waves, the waves of just plague marines spilling out, the anti-infantry 2-up flamers everywhere. But I think really the real big thing that kind of killed me is I probably should have just tagged more stuff. And I think because they can fall back and shoot for 1 CP, like 1 unit. So if you just tag like a thing, it doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
They don't like spending the CP, but that army generally like tends to be pretty CP flush right now. Anyhow, like at the start of like their turn 1 or turn 2, they're gonna have like something crazy like 5 CP. If things go according to plan. And they can just kind of ride the momentum out. But as soon as you start tagging like 2 or more things, like it's like, okay, well now only 1 thing can fall back and shoot. That's a big deal. And so during the game, we talked about afterwards, during the game, I had like some rhinos that were just kind of like after they had deposited the plague marines to play the mission, charge and shoot stuff or whatever. I was kind of keeping them behind obscuring because I was like, well, I don't really have a job for these guys right now, but I don't want to lose them because like they're going to be a fast, mobile, durable asset for like late game scoring, for doing secondaries, jumping onto points, that kind of stuff. So I don't want to just like have them in the open getting shot, but I don't really have a job for them either. And in retrospect, like they probably should just been like running up the board, like tagging Sagittars and just try to like, just control his movement and shooting a little bit more. But that was a really good game. He said it was one of the best games he ever had, which I always take as a huge compliment.
That's great.
So 93-91 Nick. Round 4. Yeah, Justin Jones, Grey Knights. A little bit like an off meta list because he was running some Dread Knights, which you don't see too much because they're durable. They're durable, but like their shooting and their melee is kind of like
it's not what it used to be.
It's not. I mean, it will do damage over time, but it's not going to like immediately obliterate stuff. And he was running some strikes, and then he was running the 2 5-man units Terminators with Librarians. I know the Librarians will do big damage with the Vortexes. And I think this was Sights of Power. And I was just trying to make sure like he wasn't running away with the score too much, and I was just kind of formed the triangle. That was like kind of my plan. The entire event was basically just to form a triangle on 3 objectives and just try to like win the passive game, and like maybe if they tried to push, then I would just kill like whatever they pushed into me. And basically we were just kind of trading back and forth, but because he's playing Grey Knights and I'm playing Death Guard, it was just kind of, I was slowly starting to come out ahead on all these trades, and I was just starting to be able to put more and more material into the 3 objectives I was holding, and he was having less and less stuff to answer with, and it just kind of became a game of him trying to like keep his Librarians alive because they're the only thing they were doing damage to my army. And then there was also like a random turn, like turn 3 or turn 4, where just my dice got a little bit hot and his dice got a little bit cold, and he lost 2 of his Dread Knights to just like nothing. Like I think he lost a full health Dread Knight to like indirect shooting.
That's crazy.
And this entire event, I was accidentally playing my Playburst callers as strength 6, not strength 8.
Damn you! Is this 3 events in a row?
Yeah, I didn't find out till after this event. I'm like, no. So I was playing type. So Typhus, I found out is strength 9, not strength 8, and Playburst callers are strength 8, not strength 6. So even wounding these Dread Knights on 5s, where I should have been winning them on 3s, he just randomly lost one to like indirect.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember what the other one died to. I think it was like some mortals and then like a bunch of chip damage from like Meltas and like just random plasma guns and just random ass shooting. And it was already kind of hurt. But yeah, it just got to a point where like it was just his army was starting to get a little bit threadbare, and it just kind of finally snapped.
Yeah.
And at that point I've been taking like, I think I was taking homers and cleanse. And I just wasn't giving up anything on primary. So ended up winning that, like the score of this game. I don't even remember what the score of the game was. but I remember it was like the point differential was pretty big. Like it was like 20 something, maybe like 30. And it doesn't really show how close it looked until the end, where it was just kind of like it just kind of like broke open. Round 5, I played Thomas Bird from Pro Tabletop. Big name in the kind of like Atlanta / Greater Georgia area. Awesome guy, just absolute gem of a human being. This was Chosen Battlefield with a fixed center, which I get a little bit nervous on because my army doesn't really do Chosen Battlefield too well. I tried to go the safe route and just put the objectives relatively close to each other, but like I didn't want to get greedy because I was like, I always place the objectives. I'm like, well, what if I lose the roll off and they take my side? Am I going to be happy with that? So I try to keep the battlefield like really fair whenever I do Chosen Battlefield, at least with this army, So I'd rather just keep like stuff like all the objectives close to each other because again I was playing a slow army, so I was like if we flip, I at least want all the objectives close to each other. He was running Ultramarine Gladius and with like Martius Calgar and the Land Reader Redeemer and like big aggressor brick, just all the shooting stuff. And turn 2, he basically did a no knock warrant raid on my safe, what I thought was my safe objective, and he killed like 40% of my army. And I tried to call it back, and it just wasn't enough, and then I just died. So it was rough. It was rough. I'm still like not 100% sure what happened. I have never been killed so fast before.
That's tough. Was it like typical, or did you run into what your green eyed opponent ran into? It was just like your dice are a little cold, his dice are a little hot. It's just a lot of shots.
It was a combination of that, but I mean, it was just I think it was just the fact that he all-in'd me super hard on turn 2. He basically committed with everything except for the big aggressor brick. But I mean, he pulled in the lone gladiator, get shots. He brought in the Redeemer to like push into the center objective, drop its stuff, get shots, but then also cover any kind of recourse with Overwatch, a nasty Overwatch. And then it was also like looking into like my safe kind of like no man's land objective. And then he brought in a bunch of Inceptors to look in the other side of the safe no man's land objective. And then he brought up a captain with a bunch of assault intercessors. And everyone was asked about the assault intercessors, but it was mostly just the delivery mechanism for this captain.
Mm-hmm.
And then he also did advance in charge with Martius Calgar. And, he had them and the Victor's Guard. And then he had I think he attached them to the Eradicators that game. And he basically pushed out, and this was on Hammer and Anvil. Or sorry, no, this was on Dawn of War. So like turn 2, like on Dawn of War, if you get aggressive, like you are like in your opponent's house.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happened. He just showed up in my house turn 2, and he's just like, I'm gonna do a full commitment right here and now. And he basically just cracked like 2 out of the 3 rhinos, just picked up like almost everything that was inside. I think he like got a play burst crawler, he just got all sorts of stuff. And at that point, it was just like I rapid ingressed my Terminator brick with Typhus kind of behind him, and I was able to grab the no man's objective on his side and then sticky it in my turn because I rapid ingressed on it. But at that point, they just had too many jobs to do, and that Terminator unit is not fast enough, and like the shooting is only like 12-inch flamers. It just had too many jobs to do in too many places, and just wasn't enough. So great opponent, but yeah, it was just like I wish I could say it was like a long tactical for like 5-round game, but no, he just killed me turn 2 and I just died. So
sometimes it's over fast.
But then we went out to a place called Papacitos, which apparently is the same chain as Papa Do's, but instead of Cajun, it's Mexican. This place wasn't as good, but they did offer these incredible meat platters with just like shrimp and like lamb and just all sorts of stuff like that. So we got the queso and the guac and like some appetizers and everything, but then we just ordered 2 of these gigantic like fajita like meat platters. I think one of them was $100 and the other one was $130, which sounds like a lot for a platter, but like split among 6 people, like it really was not a big deal at all. And so we just ate so much, and it was just all meat. There was like I think there was like rice and beans involved with her, but like no one ate that crap because there was just enough meat for all of us. All 6 of us got full on like pure meat, tortillas, and margaritas, and it was awesome. So that was a great dinner. Day 3, I played against a guy playing demons. So another faction I play. I haven't touched them for a while because they took some heavy nerfs, and I kind of didn't really like the playstyle, in 10th edition. But at least I was familiar with the army. This was actually a pretty good game. I thought I had this game in the bag after turn 2 I was able to lift up the Khorne Demon Prince with the enhancement, Be'lakor, and Shalaxi for basically free.
Damn.
And so I was like, oh, I got this game in the bag.
Yeah, let's pick up Be'lakor. It's sort of over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially the big thing is just make sure Shalaxi doesn't drop somewhere where she's just eating up chunks of your army uncontested. Yeah. As long as you can, if you can control where she comes down. I think he actually started most of the stuff on the board. Which kind of makes sense because they can do the reposition kind of thing. But still, we just pretty much just slammed right into each other in the middle. But if you can control where she goes and what she goes into, and if you can pick her up without overextending yourself, you're definitely kind of set up for the rest of the game. Mm-hmm. But this was corners, and I basically went towards the center, and I went towards the bottom right objective because he had set up the greater and clean one at the top to push towards my top left objective. And I was like, well, and he deployed that guy kind of early. And I was like, well, I don't really want to deal with that guy while the Khorne Demon Prince and Shalaxi are alive. So I'm just going to make the decision in deployment to give up that objective. And then I basically decided I'm like, okay, well, we're just going to turn this into Dawn of War. And I'm going to focus on this bottom right objective instead, which I don't normally like to do because it's kind of far from your deployment zone. But he gave me no choice because he had the greater and clean one up there. And I was like, I can't deal with the greater and clean one until all the rest of the threats are dead. So I literally deployed all my rhinos on the line looking at that objective. And it was Playburst crawlers, and then one rhino and the drone went towards the middle. But yeah, he sent Shalaxi, Be'lakor, and the Demon Prince. They just wanted the rhinos, and they killed rhinos. Mm-hmm. And then Plague Marines popped out. Next turn, I literally just killed all of that. But then he started moving he brought down the Changeling where the Greater Clean One was, and he pushed the Greater Clean One up, and he started flaming with his vomit and stuff like that, and shooting with the flail, and he kind of pushed him towards the center, and he basically positioned that guy to kind of be a durable center Overwatch threat, and now because a lot of my guys were out of the rhinos, it was it was kind of a credible threat.
Yeah.
And between that guy and the Soul Grinder with the Slanesh gun, which is very good at picking up Marine equivalents, he was actually able to really chew up the 10-man fight versus brick, which is my hardest hitting unit. Because I ended up overcommitting to kill the 3 big boys, which I was happy that I killed the 3 big boys, but the 10-man Plague Marine unit didn't really even have to activate in combat. I ended up killing Shalaxi to shooting. So they were just kind of on the center objective for no reason, and they're not that durable. It's just 10 Plague Marines and then 2 characters, so it's functionally 14 T5 TAC Marine equivalents. So he just completely fucked it up with shooting, and now I'm like, okay, well now I have a bunch of wounded Plague Marine units, 3 Playburst crawlers, Typhus, and the Terminators to deal with this Greater and Clean One, and a Soul Grinder, Celeste, and the Changeling. And I'm like, ooh, this is actually maybe not as in the bag as I thought.
Mm-hmm.
So I was, doing grenades and doing Typhus into the Greater and Clean One, and I basically got the Terminators into combat with, and I was spending every single CP I had to just do the lethal hits, exploding hits, to try to just really kind of drag down this Greater and Clean One. And the game came down to kind of the very end of the game. The Greater and Clean One was on 3 wounds, and I took Assassinate, bring it down. So I saw the opportunity to close it out. But this was Purge the Foe, so you get 4 primary points for killing something. So I set up a bunch of shooting at a unit of Nurglings to secure the kill one, and then I was like, okay, well the rest of the damage is going to go to the Greater Clean One, and then that'll be kill 1. Maybe I'll kill 2 things. He'll kill 1. I'll get Assassinate. I'll get Bring It Down. We're gonna be good. And just this is where the mental fatigue and the mental fog and fatigue kind of kicked in. I just forgot to kill the Nerdling unit, and I put all the damage in the Greater Clear one, and like lived on 1 wound.
Oh.
And I was like, oh crap. I was like, so now not only did I not get the 4 points for kill 1, but if he kills any of my wounded Plague Marine units, he gets kill 1, kill more. That's 8-point swing plus whatever he draws in secondary, and he has end of round scoring for turn 5.
Right.
So I ended up killing. He left the Greater Unclean one in combat. I ended up killing it in combat, but he was in a very good position to kill 2 units. And so I had put a lot of my wounded Plague Marine units in Rhinos to try to like deny him points on this. But he drew, I think, Extend Battle Lines and Storm Hostile. And he basically, I had a unit of 5 Plague Marines on my bottom right objective that were exposed. They were kind of ringed around to zone out the 3-inch deep strike stratagem that demons have. But the objective was sticky. And he moved his Skull Cannon to shoot them. And he dropped Celeste 9 inches away because it wasn't, he didn't have shadows in No Man's Land because I controlled 2 objectives. And he was going to go for a 9-inch charge. And he shot, and he basically declared that he was going to shoot them with a Skull Cannon. I was like, put the clock on me. Let me just think about this for a little bit, because I was considering using Cloud of Flies on to make a -1 to hit. But I was like, well, if he just bangs this 9, Celeste will. I mean, with the big axe, it's hitting on 3s, but it's a lot of attacks. If he does any shooting damage on the way in, I was like, there's a real good chance that he just kills this unit with Celeste. It could definitely happen. So I was kind of sort of thinking, I'm like, well, that's if he makes the charge. And then I was like, what if I make him not make the charge? And I was like, well, Skull Cannon's only AP1. I'm in cover right now. I'm like, I had 1 CP. So I'm like, okay, hey, I'm going to pop go to ground. I pass the clock over to him. And he's like, that gives you cover? I'm like, yeah, it gives me cover, but it also gives me a 6-up invuln. So he starts shooting a Skull Cannon. He rolls like something decent, like 7 shots, where like that, like 4 wounds or 3 wounds, whatever. I think he rolls like 4 wounds. I take all the saves on my invuln instead of my 3-up armor save, and I fail 3 out of the 4. Pick up 3 of the Plague Marines.
Love it.
He's now out. Celeste is now out of shooting and charge range, and deny him the kill. Deny him the objective. He doesn't get any of the secondaries, and I managed to claw that win out. It was certainly going to be like a 5-point loss, and it ended up being like a 12-point win.
Big brain.
Yeah, and then round 7, I got really big brain because I played the Death Guard Mirror, and he was running very similar list to me, but he was running with Chaos Knights, and he was running a little bit more MSU. He had 2 units of Nurglings. He had Typhus solo. He had a Lord of Contagion, which gives full hit rerolls to Terminators attached to a melee. He had that attached 3 Deathwing Knights. Not Deathwing Knights, Deathstroke Terminators. And then he was running, and his list was like almost exactly the same as mine. Besides that, except he had 1 Plague car with the Flamers, and then he had 1 Brigand and 2 Carnivores. And I was kind of a little bit like, okay, 2 Carnivores is kind of interesting. But then like after I played it, after we played each other, I actually really liked it because again, the Death Guard list don't have a credible source of tank shock. And then when you eat 3 grenades, a super spike from Typhus, and then a tank shock from a Carnivore, you're kind of like, okay, now this makes sense. And I mean, they also move 14 inches, and so the army stays fast all game long because you have a random drone flying around, moving 10 inches will fly. You have the Rhinos moving 12. Plague Marines have the Plague Marines can move like they have a threat range of 20 inches for melee out of that because 3 + 5 + 12, so 20 inch out of a Rhino for shooting. You got 1 of the Knights is moving 12, 2 of the Knights are moving 14. The list is actually like deceptively fast. And then you have the deep striking with the Nurglings, rapid ingress from Typhus and the Terminators, who I was able to keep Typhus out of my backfield, but it's kind of like a little tech piece where people will run Typhus solo because his ability to do D6 mortals doesn't count as any sort of attack or whatever. So he can just sit in your backfield targeting people with D6 mortals within 18 inches while still also scoring 4 points of homer in your back turn.
Wow.
And he's annoying to kill because he's a T6 6-wound Terminator.
Yeah.
So the real thing that like basically what happened here is this was supply ground, and this was like the worst timeline because it was Death Guard Mirror, and the middle objective disappeared first. Then my top left objective disappeared, and the bottom right objective was the one that stayed. And he had enough MSU and speed where he kind of basically went 3 lanes, and I basically had to see the top left objective because I was like, I don't have enough units.
Can't get out there, yeah.
Just I don't have enough units to contest this, like with because you need to be able to contest for like all 3 objectives for like 2 waves to really make a difference. Because if you just contest for like 1 wave and they deny it, then you just lose all those assets for free, and you just throw units away. So I focused on the middle one, and then the bottom right, the one that was going to stay permanently. And he took Homer's Cleanse, and I probably should have took Homer's Cleanse too, but I took Homer's Bring It Down, which ended up kind of being a mistake because he spread so far in the vehicles. And also, I dropped my Terminators. One, I was a little bit sloppy where I dropped them down, and they caught some shooting from the Plague Burst 2-up infantry flamers that they totally didn't have to get shot by. And I had lost a Terminator to that. 2, they were kind of between the objective. They were between the center objective and the objective I was seeding, when really I should have just doubled down the objective that was going to stay there for the end game. And so that was kind of basically it. Also, I tried to tie up a wounded Plague Marine unit with a Rhino that was full health, and he ended up just killing the full health Rhino with like 3 Plague Marines. I was like, well, that shouldn't have happened, but I totally should have respected the fact that it could have. So basically, his list was better than mine for this mission. I am going to try out his list. I'm not sure if I like it. I'm not sure if I like giving up 2 Plague Burst crawlers, but he definitely sold me on the carnivores, so that was kind of cool. But his list was better than mine for this mission. This mission was darkest timeline because the middle objective disappeared first, and it favored his list more than mine.
Yeah.
I made a mistake in secondaries, and I made 2 mistakes in the game. 1, the placement of the Terminators, and 2, the charge with the Rhino. That just had a very small benefit, but had a huge risk margin that I didn't respect. And basically he played really well, and that was all those things accumulated to a loss. And so I ended up 4-3. But I had every single one of my opponents was a great opponent. I thought I had great games. The entire event was great. Atlanta Airport sucks. Atlanta is terrible to drive through, but I'll definitely go back to Warzone Atlanta.
Yeah,
that was my event. It was really good.
That's cool, man. It sounds like a great event. All good, like good games too. It's like
Yeah, weirdly enough, my easiest games were on my first day, which was the try hard bracket.
Right.
None of my games were easy after that. They were all like it felt like we were all kind of like in the same like kind of power level. So it was good. But that's a good feeling. That's what all events should feel like.
I love that War Dog tech. That's nice. That's cute.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Everyone's always like, oh, triple brigand. And whenever I run triple brigand with Death Guard, it feels like you're really open. It feels like you're very vulnerable to fast melee coming through walls and kind of getting into you. And it just feels. But when he was running, and we talked about that. He was like, yeah, I kind of felt the same thing, but I switched over to the carnivores, and now I get more speed. Now on a go turn, I get a 5th viable source of mortals because you do 4 grenades, typhus, and then you tank shot for the carnivore. Yeah. Like something's dying.
Pick something. Yeah,
and you get a really good melee unit on top of it. He's like, I like having the 1 brigand, as a way to like demech people, but like the carnivores have just been fantastic. He's like, when you start having like the Terminators with the Lord of Contagion, with the rerolls, the enhancement, you have the fight first brick, and then you have like carnivores. He's like, it gets crazy. I'm like, yeah, I can totally see it. The cost is you lose the indirect of 2 Plague Burst crawlers, but he's like, I do like the 1 Plague Burst crawler because the 1 Plague Burst crawler with the Rhino is like one of the best home field objective holders in the game. I was like, yeah, I totally agree with that. So I like this list. I'm gonna try it out.
Cool.
That was it.
Cool.
Let's say I think this is a good time to run into questions. So we had fewer questions, but some of them definitely seemed a little more involved. I definitely want to get your takes on some of them.
All right.
So, someone posted a list in here. We'll leave that to the end. From I don't know if it's Hosea or Hosea. I apologize if I am absolutely butchering your name. Hosea Gattle. Yeah, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He says, I am relatively new to Warhammer, having played for about 6 months. I did my first RTT about 3 weeks ago, which was a lot of fun, going 1 win, 2 losses. His win was in the Grey Knights. His losses were the Chaos Knights and Eldar with triple Knight Spinner. Is that triple Wraith Knight and a single spinner, or is that like a Knight and 3 spinner? I don't know.
Triple Knight.
But it's still Eldar. It's Eldar.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about the gap between me and truly going X1. I play Black Templars. That's good army right now. I took too long at the table with switching units and knowing profiles. How do you balance treating unique units for specific problem solving and speed memorization of the list? Oh, there's going to be a multi-part question. Okay, well, let's break it down right there. If you are that new, 6 months, then I think of it as like Warhammer 101, like Warhammer 102, unique units for specific problem solving. That's something that comes way down the road
later,
in my opinion. So I think you need to have some anti-tank for obviously for high toughness targets of vehicles and monsters. You need to have some high volume stuff, so that way you don't just completely like throw your hands up the air when you run into like just 120 orc boys or like Nid Swarm or something like that. Something where you need a lot of volume. But if you start getting like deep into the weeds of like the techie stuff, like there's a lot of ways for that to go wrong. One, it really requires a little bit of like meta mastery and knowledge. And you also have to really kind of like recognize like, well, how likely am I going to run into like that list and archetype and unit at the event I'm going to? And again, if you're inexperienced, there's a real possibility that like you can guess incorrectly or get that wrong. Also, at RTT, pairings at RTT are generally pretty volatile. So you just might, if there's enough people, like you and the guy that you think you're going to have to go through just may just never play into each other. And you end up like, at larger RTTs, it's really common just to have like 3 undefeated, 2 undefeated, something like that. So you just might not play each other. There's also the fact that like if you're newer, your unit might be out of position and it might get picked up before it ever actually gets to deal with the unit you brought it for, even if you get the pairing that you're hoping to get, or that you're hoping to avoid, but you brought a unit just in case you get it. You will get more bang for your buck if you're new by just generally having an idea of how your list works, building in redundancy, but building a little bit of raw power, and just having a generic game plan going forward. Like for my the Death Guard list I was running, it has a good matchup into a lot of armies because generally the game plan is my default mode is I'm going to take -1 save, I'm going to drive my army onto 3 objectives, and I'm going to take cleanse homers. And that was like my default game plan for just everything. And then I was using kind of like, meta matchup knowledge and then just watching for mistakes to kind of go from there. But if you start getting to like these lists that are just like creative problem solving for every single matchup, but you don't actually have the experience in all these matchups, you're going to be having to think on the fly and you're going to be playing basically like a turn or 2 behind. And that's a lot to ask of someone in a game this complicated if you've only been playing for 6 months. So it is, especially if you're trying to learn, I like redundancy and raw power because if you bring too many guns and you bring too many killing units, those units can still do actions and sit on objectives. But if you bring too many tech choices and too many mission playing units, if someone pushes into you and disrespects you because they look at your list and they see you do no damage, you don't actually have a way to fight them off at that point.
Yeah.
Also, if you bring one-offs of units and that unit gets caught out of position and dies, that dimension of your army is just gone. Whereas if you bring Black Templars, if you bring 3 Sword Brethren units and you bring 3 transports for them to go in, and you bring Helbricht and 2 captains and you attach them all to it, it's like,
oh boy,
they have to commit to crack a transport and then kill whatever's inside, and that takes a real commitment. And then now whatever they committed to kill that is exposed, but they've only killed a third of your forward-facing units. Now they have to eat. They now are going to get charged by the 2 other Sword Brethren units and get shot by whatever shooting support you also brought. And I really like these lists where it's like 3 hammer units, 3 transports, and then like 3 shooting units to back it up. It's not exciting, but that is a fantastic archetype right now to learn how to play Warhammer. And it's like, as long as you take homers and then whatever your opponent gives up, or homers and cleanse, or just say, screw it. I have MSU. Black Templars is a great army to do MSU with, because you can cut back to like maybe 2 Sword Brethren units and then bring a bunch of Crusaders and Scouts and Rhinos, and you can just play tactical, and you can actually do really well. Black Templars are a fantastic army right now for you to build like these really redundant style lists that can bring a lot of raw damage, but can also still play like tactical or fixed. And just as long as you can just develop a raw game plan, that's better than trying to chase down these little tech pieces.
Give you a lot of flex. They're pretty durable. They hit super hard.
Black Templars hit real hard. We were talking about this. I don't remember if I mentioned it pre-show or like in the show, but like Black Templars are basically the Imperial version of Chaos Space Marines, and they emulate that play style and that archetype extremely well, just with loyalist shooting. But man, they hit so hard.
They do.
So that's what I would recommend. That's what I recommend is just build redundancy and power, and then try to when you build those redundancy, that's less data sheets you have to memorize. And just kind of learn generally how much punishment your units can take and how much punishment they can get out, and just try to line that up appropriately. Be like, and then as you get reps in, you're going to be like, okay, well, turn 1, I'm going to push up. I'm going to get homers with the transport. I'm going to stage all my stuff. I'm going to like have my dreads ready to step out in the firing lanes, and then I'm going to pass turn. And that should take you, as long as you get like that deployment, you get that kind of play pattern down. That will take you like 2 minutes, if even. So you're going to have a very fast turn 1. And that gives you more time on the clock for turn 2 and turn 3 when the game really starts. And then as you kind of get those reps, especially if you're playing with the same units over and over again, you're going to be like, okay, well, this unit takes one Redemptor shooting and then a Sword Brethren charge to finish off generally. Or this unit's a little bit tougher. It takes 2 Redemptors and 1 Sword Brethren unit. This unit's a little bit tougher. It takes 2 Redemptors shooting it and 2 Sword Brethren units going into it. Or it takes the Hellbrecht unit. It just takes a little bit more. And if you kind of like just reduce your unit count, it's going to be so much easier. I'm sorry, I'm like ranting and rambling a little bit right now, but like that's kind of what I would just really recommend is just really focus, drilling down on your best units and building out that core of like those 3 to 4 like solid units that are going to print money every single time they activate. And as you get more comfortable with the army, that's when you start kind of expanding out to these other little things.
Yeah. Josiah, I think given that you've been playing for 6 months, it's sick that you got to win at an event, at your first event that you went to. 1. And then 2, I think a lot of the other questions that you've got here are things that are just naturally going to develop over time. Like you'll know where your units do, you know what the stats are, you'll get better decision making. That stuff, like, thankfully, is just a matter of playing the game, and like you're already doing it. You're already doing it. So.
Yep. How do you balance firepower with screening, melee, and list building? The easiest answer, honestly, is I would just crib someone else's notes on this. You can go to one of the guys from StatCheck in our Discord, Frank. He does a thing called Dirt Sheets, where it's just he basically shows how often everything shows up. Honestly, if you cross-reference his material with ours, and then with the Wednesday articles like Goonhammer has on like what's winning and the breakdowns of the lists, between those 3 data sources, like there shouldn't be like any for any army that's in the top 80% of the meta. There shouldn't be any mystery. And you don't have to net list an entire list, although I would recommend it, especially if you're newer. But like at least net list concepts. Like people will talk. People a lot of times will talk about like a set of units that support each other as like a package. So when we're building a Death Guard list, a package would be 2 units of 5 Plague Marines, a biologist attached to one of those units, and then the Rhino for all 11 of those guys to ride in. That's a package. If for some whatever reason you have some sort of aversion to net listing, you want to be unique, you want to put your own spin on it. Maybe you have maybe it's like a model thing because you're new to the hobby. You've only been playing for 6 months. The hobby is expensive. You're not quite there yet with your collection. Try to identify these packages over and over that are showing up over and over in winning lists. And if you can't bring over the whole list, at least try to identify what the winning packages that people are bringing and bring some of those over. So for Black Templars, a lot of that is like Helbrecht and Black Templars and like a Land Raider Redeemer or like an Impulsor for them ride-in, a Captain, and then some Black Templars to ride in, like a Redemptor or two to kind of serve as like anchor units. I've seen people like do a lot of stuff with like Crusaders and Scouts running around in Rhinos to be like a credible low level / mid level like escalation tool that can also play like missions and like can fight your trash and get threatened with like random multi-beltas and stuff like that. So if you can identify those packages that show and those like net lists that show over and over again, like I would just do that. But firepower and screening, I would say it's probably better just to go max firepower, get some games in, and be like, okay, well, now I need some screens. So, and then you kind of work your way backwards from there. But I would say at minimum, I would just say 2 screening units, like 2 units of scouts or like scouts and cursors or something like that. Like when I run Chaos Knights, I run 2 units of Nerdlings minimum. And that lets you kind of screen out like pregame moves or melee or something like that. And then you go firepower. And then you kind of see if you can go further from there. But the short answer is honestly just to copy what works and just a net list.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like I said, it's going to come with experience.
Yeah. Spam under costed output is the way, but it takes time to recognize what the
exactly. Like if you just spam under costed shooting units, you'll actually just have a positive win rate. So that's the real secret. That's the real secret that Art of War doesn't want you to know. Will that be enough for you to win majors? No. Will that be enough for you to like have a solid 60% win rate for the rest of your 40K career? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I have never played into, I think he's saying I've never played into Imperial Knights or Chaos Knights, so messed up deployment and movement first turn. What do you do when you've not had reps or a lot of reps into Army? Unfortunately, there's just not really, you can kind of mitigate, like you can kind of like set up for a soft landing, but there's a reason why people talk about reps so much, just because it's like the best learning experience. Yeah. Don't treat your event as the end all be all. Like just I treat every single one of my events as practice for my next event.
The next one.
Exactly. So that chaos, if that was your first matchup in the Chaos Knights, you probably learned a lot. You probably learned about how fast that army truly is. Like the fact that it has the speed to go around walls, but it can also just go through walls, and models. And all of a sudden, this army that moves 12 and shoots 24 and has a 36-inch threat range, a 36-inch threat range on a board that's 60 inches by 44 means you're probably everything that's not in the ruin in your home deployment zone is probably getting shot. Especially if you are, I don't know what kind of terrain you're playing on locally, but that's assuming like good terrain. If you're playing on like an RTT and it's like someone just put a bunch of like aquarium, like fish tank stuff on there, like, man, I'm sorry, you're going to get shot to shit. But even on like WTC boards and GW, like they can get angles. So definitely some learning experiences there. But when you are trying to mitigate that initial blow, the best thing you can do is probably look up the meta lists and play a game called Spot the Synergy. So, go into the Stat Check Discord, go into the channels for the armies that you want to learn about, find out what everyone's buzzing about. Like right now, Necrons, everyone's buzzing about race. Why are they buzzing about race? What do they do? Technomancers, why are they buzzing about that? Why are they talking about it? Catan, what do they do? Why are all the Necron players so excited about that? This Immortal Bomb I keep hearing about. What does that do? What detachment is all this in? So like right there, those are 4 units that everyone's talking about. If you don't know, when I'm listing off those units, if you don't know why I listed them off, you need to find out why.
Mhm.
Is really the answer. Especially like new books that like if a book has a new codex and people are excited about it, guess what? People are going to bring that to the event because it's the new and exciting thing, especially if they think it's good.
Yeah.
So right there is some real easy reading that should take you like maybe like 15, 20 minutes. You can go in Wattpedia, you can go in Goonhammer articles. You don't have to memorize the exact stat line, but you have to understand what the data sheet does at the very basic data sheet level, and then how do the characters, supporting units, detachments, and army rules and stratagems synergize that and like kind of take it to the next level. Once you learn that, you can kind of like guess, be like, okay, well, this army is going to like move up and be hypermobile, or this army is going to move up and take space and be durable on the mid board. And then any kind of response I have, it's going to like shoot me or charge me or whatever, or it's going to teleport immortals around, do like 20 dev wounds to my army, that kind of stuff. If you at least know generically about what the opponent is going to do, you can kind of have like mitigating plans for that. You may not have good context for how hard individual units hit because you haven't played against it before, but at least you know, like, okay, well, this unit's gonna buff this unit and then attach this character to like make it do X, and then it's gonna teleport over and it's gonna shoot stuff. This unit's gonna push in the middle, it's gonna be durable. This unit here is gonna move away the first time I target it, or the first time I try to like get within 9 inches of it. Just like little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's really no solution for reps. Just honestly play as much as you can.
Yeah, you can also take advantage of all like the ridiculous explosion in content creation for Warhammer 40k on the competitive end. Like, if you know you're going to play somebody who's playing a given faction, you're unfamiliar with it. Just like look up, did Art of War do like a rundown of this codex? Did they do a rundown of the index? Did somebody in Stat Check Discord do it? Did Art of War Down Under do a new codex review where they invited a faction expert on to talk about what they're seeing in it? Like that sort of stuff that you can passively listen to. You're like, oh, that's what immortals do. Oh, Canoptic Wraiths with a 5-up, feel no pain, and 4 wounds, and a good armor save, and high toughness, and blah, 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 blah.
He's a little bit inconsistent on when he shows up. And I know some people say his voice puts him to sleep, but Auspex Tactics, I mean, that guy is like the king of short form. He's the king of short form content, you know, like the guy literally just makes very concise, to the point PowerPoints and then reads them.
Yeah.
Which is great, especially if you're kind of like, for me, I have like a super short, unless I'm like hyper focused on something, I have like a short attention span. So it's kind of nice to just load up Auspex Tactics and be like, oh, he has a video about this thing I've been curious about. I just haven't had time to look it up. I'll load up his video and I'll literally move the slider. I'll be like, boom. It takes me like 10 seconds. You know, you just read like 3-4 slides and you're like, okay, got it. So stuff like that is a godsend.
Good.
Art of War, I mean, if you have the luxury to watch like a 3-hour stream game, like by all means do it. Those guys have a lot to teach you. But for me, what I do is when I watch their stream games, I just move that slider all the way to basically when one of the guys is standing at the table like this, that I move the slider to that exact point, because that's when they're about to talk out the final round of the game, and they're both going to kind of like reflect on what they thought going into the game that they were right about and what they thought about the game that they were wrong about, and then any kind of changes to their gameplay or list that they're going to make going forward. And that, for me, that is like where 90% of the insight is. So, and then if I really need extra context, I'll go back and like, if they're talking about like a specific play or something like that, I might go back to like that point of the video and just kind of like watch it unfold with that knowledge of what they were talking about. But that's just what I do, just kind of speed run it, is I just go to the very end when they just kind of talk about, because you know how like after 2 people play Warhammer, they always kind of talk about like, oh yeah, we'll just kind of blah, 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 blah. Art of War guys do that too. And that stuff is actually super insightful. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah. Keep playing. You're doing it.
Yep. From Griggs, Custodes are trashed here, but there's Slate and Codex coming soon. Is now the best time for me to start building the army? And if so, what should my first 2,000 points be?
Yes, it is the best time to start.
Yes, it's best time. It is a loaded question. I think a big part of Custodes' numbers right now is just faction abandonment. You know, there's just
people ditch.
Pretty much all the people that were really carrying the win rate super hard have just moved on to other stronger stuff. Doesn't mean Custodes is truly like 43% win rate army. No, it's probably closer to a 49% win rate army.
Okay.
But it's just all the really strong players have just moved off it.
Yeah.
And so now you just have like people who are casual, people who don't get as many games in, like people who maybe struggle in list building, but there's no like real strong player to like copy like known concepts off of. So they're kind of rudderless at the list building stage, or like they don't have the matchups, stuff like that. But Jack, we had a Team USA meeting earlier today, and then afterwards, a couple of us were hanging around, and Jack Harpster had played Custodes recently into John. I don't know if this was a stream game or not, but he had played Custodes into John running CK. I think John was running 12 War Dogs, and Jack was running 3 bricks of Wardens and a brick of Custodian Guard. And I think his characters were attached to the bricks were Curio Draxus, Captain, and then two of the Blade Champs.
Yep.
And I don't know what else was on the list, but like he was saying like, he's like, I don't remember if he won or lost, but he's like after playing it, he's like, Custodians are way better than I thought they were.
Yeah.
He also had 2 Caladius. He's like, I love the Caladius. He's like, Curio Draxus and that unit was doing dirty things to the Knights.
That unit's fucking insane. The output out of that
unit's good. So the thing is, like, the army is good. It's just there's like a thermocline of like fat of the month kind of thing, where it's like the best players that are trying to win events are going to take the best things they can, or they're going to take something that's like slightly below, but they think is getting like under respected to try to counter the best things, because you don't want to play. No one wants to be like the 13th best Eldari player in the room when they go to a super major. So a lot of times they'll just take something that's like a little bit down. They're like, okay, well, maybe I'll have a little bit of a matchup advantage here where people don't know my army, but I know theirs, and they'll try to do that thing. But there's a certain point where just an army is good, but it's just not good enough to make up for the raw power level that you're going to have at the top table day 3 undefeated of a major tournament, And so you kind of have like 2 different thermoclines. You have like the one where like all the elite players stop playing your army because your army is good, but it's not good enough to go against other elite players playing the best stuff undefeated day 3 of a super major. It's just not. It's still good, but it's not insane.
Yeah.
So you'll have a bunch of people shift off the army at that point. And when those people shift off, you'll see a noticeable dip in the win rate as the elite players aren't playing it anymore. And then you have like but those armies are still very capable of like podiuming in majors, winning GTs, winning RTTs. And then there's a point where the army gets nerfed enough where all those people that are podiuming majors, winning RTTs, winning GTs, if they have multiple armies, they're like, okay, this army is good, but this is still like a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so then they jump off it. And at that point, you just have the people that only play one faction, the people that are more casual, like that kind of stuff. And there's no one. It's like a ship with like no one at the wheel anymore. And so like there's people on board, but there's no one to follow.
Mm-hmm.
There's no example.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it just becomes rudderless. And so that's kind of where we're at with Custodes.
I think,
you'll see it with certain armies. Like someone will like take another look with fresh eyes, and the army will be like, oh hey, why is no one messing with this? These rules are actually pretty good. And just out of nowhere, you'll see someone come up with like a B tier army and start winning events, and then people start copying that, and you'll see the win rate climb as people hop back onto that faction again.
Hi, CSM.
That is kind of what happened with CSM.
Yeah, Griggs, the issue with Custodes now is that they went from like having the best defense against dev wounds to like being the absolute worst victims of it, right? Because you went from like, cool, we've got 4 up no matter what in these armor saves. We're like, we're good against all the things, to like, actually don't get our armor saves, and that's like probably 40% of the cost of each of the model getting built in, and dev wounds is too prevalent in the game in the highest performing factions right now, which also happen to be the most popular ones, for you to have a chance into those at like a GT. So like that's why you're going to see like either durability on demand through Wardens, durability through not being able to get shot at, Kyria Draxus with a unit of Custodian Guard, or durability by not being present on the board, which is going to be like Turney's Venatari. So most lists that you see that are attempting to be functional will include at least one custodian guard unit. That unit will be accompanied by Courier Jaxus. At least one unit of wardens. That unit will usually be accompanied by either a blade warden or a shield captain, usually a blade warden. Because they can move real fast up the board, and on the turn where you're like potentially subject to damage, you're like, cool, I've got 4, feel no pain against everything this turn, off we go. And they've got like toughness or incoming strength reduction or incoming wound roll reduction ability, and or you have like Alari's Terminators that are rapid ingressing down and like getting after it. It is and they're still like good. Like that army's real good so long as you're able to dodge getting smashed on by dev wounds. Like if you're like that's still tough, I think, to world eaters between 2 competent players. Not like favored, but like not a like slam dunk like world eaters in some other matchups. It's just they're overcosted given their current durability, and all the things that work best against them are really prevalent in the meta right now. You can go in an RTT with them, I think.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Radius output is also insane. Like the anti-vehicle damage, I think, does crazy. It's just it's like a flamer with a 48-inch range.
Yep. Which that brings me to the second half of I'm the worst at like rambling and going off of tangents, but that brings me to the second half of that question. Yes, now is the best time for you to start building an army. Your first 2,000 points, I would. Unfortunately, that boarding patrol had like a limited run of like 7 boxes, and it just disappeared before anyone got a chance to buy it because that boarding patrol was insane.
It was crazy.
The combat patrol is pretty decent. I would highly recommend buying, flushing out your collection of all like the plastic models. I would honestly be surprised if bikes didn't get some sort of love in January because they've been bad. They've been bad all edition. And they've actually called out Custodes as like they're like, hey, we came down a little too hard on Custodes. Which again, I think most of that is being masked. I think a lot of that is being masked by their abandonment. So keep in mind, Custodes are down here, and GW thinks they're down here. When really Custodes are kind of like here, and GW thinks they need to be here. So what's going to happen is, so like I said, they're here. They're actually here. People think they're down here, and so when GW brings them up, this is what's really going to happen. GW thinks they're going to be here post data slate, but really they're going to be up here because they're actually kind of masking how good they are. Which is, so if you can kind of like jump on it right now, while there's not a huge demand for models, like you could probably also buy like some models for cheap right now. I would probably start with like 2 combat patrols and then flush it out with like some Terminators, buy some Imperial agents. The Custodes assassin is kind of evergreen, but I would say like it's probably worth buying the other assassins too, maybe some Inquisitors. Get some Blade Champs, at least 2. Those aren't in any of the bundle boxes, so you're definitely going to want to get them before, because if Custodes end up being fat of the month, good luck getting a Blade Champ. Those are going to sell out, and you're not going to see them for a couple bucks. So it's better to get them early.
If you can find that Gene Stealer Cults versus Custodes box set from a while back, randomly in a store, my FLGS randomly won, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy this now. Cool.
There you go. Sell off the GSC, make your money back.
You keep the Custodes half. That's all units that you're going to want.
Yeah, but I would I would try to buy like the some blade. I would start with 2 combat patrols, 2 blade guard champs, maybe a pack or 2 of Terminators. Get some agents, and I know I'm not going to direct people towards alternative sources for Forge World models, but I would definitely look into getting a Caladius tank or 2 because it's just, in my experience, once the Castellan went away in mid 8th edition, the Caladius had been kind of like an evergreen good unit to have. So I would get 1 to 2 Caladius, and then I would basically try to find a way to get the other turret because they don't sell both turrets with the tank. If you have the blaze cannon and you want the autocannons, you need to buy a whole separate tank. unless you get a 3D printed one or you get like a recast one or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would recommend buying the Cladius tank with the blaze cannon. That's the anti-vehicle ones. And then if the autocannons become meta, like get someone to 3D print you a turret, or like try to find an alternate source of just the turret alone, and don't glue the turret down, just magnetize it or friction fit it.
Yep.
But those Cladius tanks they've been good for they've honestly been good for a while, and when they're bad, they don't stay bad for long.
Yeah. Always have 2 of save. You always hit on 2s.
Yeah.
Always have long range. Just good.
The Telemons have come and gone. The Pilatus have come and gone. All the different Contemptors have come and gone, but the Caladius, those things have been good, and they've been good often. So that's what I would recommend. I can't really point you to a specific list right now. I would say right now, triple Wardens and a unit of Custodian Guards, so you have 4 bricks. Seems pretty good, but in January, this is all going to change.
Yep.
From Grant, thoughts on getting out of a painting/hobby rut? I've been in a bit of a funk since getting laid off. My apologies, man. Thoughts are with you. It's been affecting a lot of stuff in my life. Desire to paint among them. I've already done things like tidy my hobby desk and put things away I'm not actively working on. But are there any other tips, advice you all have for pushing through? I tried using the deadline of an upcoming event, but ended up with list paralysis and ended up dropping out of the initial layoff happened. Now, you go first.
I have my advice might be bad here. When I stop enjoying painting or hobby stuff, I just like stop doing it and either pivot to a different hobby project or just like put it down for a little bit, because that's where I derive the majority. Great call on the Forge World units. That's like where I derive the majority, I think, of my joy from the hobby. It's just like, sit down, paint this Void Dragon. Got a nice.
I called out the Cladius specifically because I think that's the exception to the Forge World unit rule, because that thing has been perennially good for like the last 6 years.
Yeah,
off and on. Like it just keeps coming back. I just don't. It also fills a role that nothing else in that army really fills.
Yeah, like anyway. Don't buy that Atari, don't buy a Telemon, but like you feel pretty safe buying a Cladius. So Grant, yeah, man. Like if it's not fun, if what you're doing right now isn't fun, switch to a different set of models. This is at least what I would do. I'd switch to a different set of models that I think will be fun, or do a different thing, like assemble instead of painting, prime instead of like brushing, use an airbrush instead of like standard acrylics, do some weird oil work or OSL work, like find a different thing to try that's exciting. And if those aren't fun, then just wait. Just don't wait until it's fun again.
Yeah, I would agree the same thing. So normally under normal circumstances, like the using deadlines as a stressor is a good motivator. But right now, like you've had such a like life-changing kind of thing happen that I don't think you should be, because normally a negative stressor can be a good motivator, but I think in your specific situation, you don't want to add a negative stressor onto your life, which is already full of negative stressors at this point. You should shift it where your painting is now a positive like outlet, instead of a thing that you have to do. So I would focus on just painting individual models that spark joy when you paint them, that are fun to paint. For me, a lot of the ways that I get some of my best hobby work done is when I just have a spare couple minutes, like I have a spare 30 minutes or something like that. And then I'll just take some models. Like you said, I have some models sitting on my hobby desk right now. Those are kind of staged there because the next time I have a spare 30 minutes, I'm going to take a pot of paint. I'm going to take one of my nice $20 brushes, and I'm just going to lay down like a nice smooth layer of gold trim or a nice smooth leather pouch, or like a red piece of cloth or something like that. And just that instant dopamine hit of like when you get that nice thin layer of paint on, you're just like, no misstrokes, nothing like that, whatever. That is usually enough for me to like all of a sudden just shift my schedule and just create a 2-hour like hobby session. And I just get in the groove. Like I literally just slot in the groove, and all of a sudden I just knock out like 2 characters and like 3 units out of nowhere, But that's just me, like kind of like, I guess, hacking like my neurodivergence to like find a way, the hobby that works for me. But it's very much 60% of my hobbying is done that way. Only about 40% of it is done via a deadline stressor. For you, I would try to figure out a way however you need to frame it to make it where your painting is something that you're looking forward to, or something that you are going to spend 30 minutes doing and it ends up becoming 2 hours because you're just having so much fun. That's the kind of headspace I think you need to get in. And if you can't get in that space, then I would say just don't spend your time painting, because it sounds like right now it's a negative stressor for you. I had accidentally closed Discord. There we go. From Will, where is somewhere you want to go with the Elo system in the future? I have thoughts on this, but this feels more like a Cliff question.
So here's like where ideally I would like to go with this. For large events, it would be great if TOs relied upon Elo scores as a seeding method for players and pairing at the outset. Like that would be very, very, very cool. And then from there, I think, well, that's basically where I would want it to stop. I was about to say it would also be cool if there were some sort of like tangible rewards assigned at the end of, like, if it was picked up as like the seasonal marker by like some large sponsor of events. But then you run into, I was like, oh nope, I forgot, like this hobby is full of incredible nerds, including me. And like those nerds will find a way to take the like worst version of that approach and pervert it somehow. And like it will be a thing. People will be sitting on Elo scores or something. Like it'll be a whole thing. So like maybe don't do that. Now my watch is randomly going off. But it's time to go. Anyway,
you figure it out. Okay, I was gonna jump in and save you.
Yeah. So the like I think it'd be really cool for initial seeding for big events. Like that would be sick. And I think there's some limited distribution of rewards based on Elo scores, but I think that's all that comes with like a hefty amount of skepticism on my own part, because I think it's very like then it would turn into like a gameable system, and people are gaming ITC now. People would game Elo, like you'd have people like there's people out there with high Elo scores. I'm like, dude, I'm on to you. Like you're grinding out like non-competitive events that are very large because nobody's out there. Like we know who you are. We know what's going on. And they would leave out a bunch of really talented players who are like teams based, who like don't have time for GTs anymore. You know, it's just turns into a thing. I think on the end, it'll be really cool to see like how high Elo betas compare to other brackets of the Elo system. Like that, I'm interested in the analysis part of it and less about the like use cases in game.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the side of the skepticism right there, because I kind of want it to be like, I don't know if I'm using this correctly, but like it's a little bit right now. It's a metric that has no real driving effect on the game itself.
Yeah.
It doesn't care as long as you hit the mark of 5 rounds of 25 plus players. It doesn't care about your podium. Nope. It doesn't care about if you win the event. It doesn't care about your placing. It doesn't really care about like how many. All it cares about is just game by game basis. You know, that's all it cares about. So if you go to a 100-person 7-round event and you go 6-1, you know, it's just going to reward you by all those games. Mm-hmm. You know, but if you win a 5-round event, you know, you might have a nice uptick because your top table round or your 4th or your 5th round was probably the person you had to go through to win that event. But it's still, you won 5 games versus like 6-1 or something like that. Anyways, I digress. It's kind of like I guess right now I'm skeptical of it becoming a thing that like all of a sudden like affects the game. Just like when people use battle points as a tiebreaker, you know, what happens in your game should stay in that game. The only thing that should come out of it is a W, an L, or a D. You know, now like when it's like battle points or points destroyed or whatever starts becoming a tiebreaker, it just starts having these weird
Weird.
meta. It's a weird external factor on the game, and so that's why I'm skeptical on it. What I want to see is we've talked about this before. Is I would love to see an Elo filter added on to the meta dashboard.
Oh, that's coming. That's like next week, Tim. You're ready.
We talked about it, but I've so not to let the cat out of the bag, or whatever. But we simulated that in the past before we created the Elo system, where we kind of had a loose approximation of it with the veteran, experienced newcomer filter on the meta dashboard. It does a similar thing. It's just a little bit less granular. It's just under the assumption that people that are going to lots of GTs and lots of majors are people who are dedicated to improving at this game and have the experience to back it up. So the idea is that trend would approximately follow the trend line of Elo. And for the most part, it does. But now that we have Elo as a trackable metric, that filter of newcomer, veteran, experience, whatever, it's kind of almost redundant. So that is kind of what I'm looking for, is where we can actually fine tune and be like, okay, well, what is winning in the 1700 bracket? What's winning in the 1800 bracket? At what Elo bracket does CSM start pulling ahead of Eldar, or does it start lagging behind? So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to look at.
I'm excited to do stuff like what does a shift from one faction to another when it becomes the new hotness do for the average player's Elo coming into that faction? What's the Elo bump that you can expect after playing your first event with 10th edition release Eldar, something along those lines? That'll be super interesting to check out. The other thing I want to say is that this is the best question. The best person to ask this question is Jeremy, as the creator of this entire thing. I know he's got some ideas about what he'd like to do with Elo, and some really interesting technical analysis on the back end to increase its predictive accuracy. So yeah, I'm pretty hyped about it. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah, Echo Custody, Cliff. From the analysis side, I'm very excited about what we can do with Elo, especially because right now Elo is just the Elo data set is derived from the main data set, and it'll be cool to kind of reflect it back on as a filter. And I think there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff we can do with that.
Internet
yeah. From Pizza Bagels, Tommy in the Discord. When large shifts in the meta occur, i.e. new codexes or data slate gets released, how do you evaluate those meta shifts, prioritize hobby projects through the lens of the updated meta? Honestly, kind of a lot of concepts and questions in that question. A big part of it is how big your collection is, how open you are to borrowing models versus if you are the type of person who always wants to run the newest, hottest, latest fad, you are not willing to borrow or unable to borrow, and you need to have the real models, and you can't afford a commission painter or flow, you are going to be chained to a hobby desk, and you are also going to not have a lot of disposable income available to you because you're basically just going to be spending money through the nose. So a big part of it is just how much are you willing to give a game of toy soldiers? And probably at that point, everyone kind of finds where they are on that graph, of how much they're willing to give to this game. Me generally, I own all of Chaos and Orcs, and I've kind of gotten rid of all my little side projects and everything. And so now anything that falls into that umbrella, I'm like, okay, I can pivot to it pretty quickly, especially if I can see the changes coming. But anything outside of that umbrella, it's going to take me forever, and it's going to be very expensive to pivot. And pivoting in this hobby, you can do it quick or you can do it cheap. You can't do both, unfortunately, unless you just borrow it or you just already have it on hand. If you're someone who is if that's how you are, then the best recommendation I can give would be to try to extrapolate when major rule shakeups are going to happen, like data slates, balance passes, stuff like that, and try to like make sure that your events happen like about a month to 2 months after those drop. So that way you can at least try to figure out, you're not scrambling at the last minute like for your event, for a rule change that happened a month before. There's time for the meta to settle, and you can figure out what the strongest thing is. You can crib all those people's notes, and then that way you have a clearly defined shopping list of what you need to get hobbied up and ready. That would be my recommendation. Also, just the more you stay plugged into the community, and the more you're like kind of have your ear to the ground of like what people think, what's been bad for the past couple of months, the past couple cycles is probably going to, whatever's been bad is probably going to get overcorrected to being good. It's probably going to get major point slashes. What is getting a codex soon? What's on the codex roadmap? Just all sorts of stuff like that. If you keep your ear to the ground, you listen to the community, and you stay like even remotely plugged in, you can kind of anticipate generally like good stuff that's coming. There's going to be surprises. You can't, unless you have an NDA, you can't predict it with 100% accuracy even then. But you can be like, okay, well, this has been bad for, Custodes been bad for a while. They're better than people think they are. So they're probably going to get major points love in January, maybe something on top of that, who knows. And then a few months after January, they're going to get a codex. So you can start anticipating that by starting to buy and hobby up Custodes now, so that way it's not such a whiplash this spring.
If you're already interested in them, like, don't do it. This is the real trap, unless you're really dedicated to the game. And if you are, then you've got a commission painter and all that stuff, right? Like, don't do it just because you think they're going to be good. Just pivot if you're like, I'm already interested in this army, and it will be cool, and it would be great if they're good by the time I have them hobbied up. Like, that's sort of where you want to be.
Yeah, it's much more fun to have like 3 to 4 armies that you actually genuinely love.
Yeah,
and then you're just kind of focusing on fleshing out those collections, and then you just take the strongest one. You either take the strongest one you have and you can play, you take that to an event you do well with, or you take like the second strongest one that you are enjoying more, and you do that. Like, it's a great feeling right now knowing that like at any given time I could take like World Eaters, CSM, like Death Guard or Orcs to an event, but that has been years and years of accumulation. And I've definitely had some strong desires to like just go out and YOLO a Tyranid army or a Necron army or something like that, when they're good. But I either just try to like resist it, or just borrow it and get it on my system, and then just continue down the path of growing my own collection. Tim the Weird Boy, with the big end of season events coming up, what are your top travel organization trip tips for going to 3 to 4 day event with a significant amount of travel required? I guess Tim's thinking about possibly going to LVO. I have a trip coming up in January. I'm going to Nottingham GT. That's the plan right now, which is going to be a weird multi-step process because Cindy wasn't able to get the same days off I was. So I'm going with my dad initially. He's going to go early with me. We're going to see Warhammer World. I'm going to go play the event, and then I'm going to go back down to London and then meet the rest of my family there when they arrive Monday morning. Hopefully no one's travel will be as complicated as mine. Travel tips. A good case. There's a lot of things that should be like your first thing, because traveling is always stressful. It's even more stressful when you're worried about repairing your models in a hotel room when you get there. Magnetic cases are good for short trips and for driving. But when you're flying, especially overseas or like longer trips, the longer you're on a plane, the more likely you are to just randomly hit some turbulence. And turbulence, transmits a lot of vibrations through the airframe, which can get transmitted to your model and can cause glued joins to come apart. So that's obviously bad. You can mitigate that a lot with foam, because foam will absorb, just like the shock absorbers of a car will absorb that and it won't transmit to your models. Whereas if you have a magnetic case with no foam, that gets transmitted directly into the models. And you can, and even though your case doesn't get dropped or banged, you can just, get to your destination, open up your case, and you open it up and some of your models just fall apart. That's why. So if you have to take a magnetic case, I would recommend between the magnetic frame and then the case itself, take some pieces of foam and slide it in there, and then like rip up some foam and put it in between your models. When I've had to travel with my Chaos Knights who don't fit in my foam tray, my Chaos Knights only fit in my magnetic tray. That's how I travel with them. I rip up pieces of foam. I put it between all the Chaos Knights in the magnetic tray. I put the magnetic tray in the case, and I put pieces of foam on all 6 sides of the magnetic tray to try to absorb all like that shock and vibration. But I really recommend foam trays.
Yeah.
When I traveled with my Death Guard, I traveled with the Citadel, the GW Citadel case, and a lot of GW products I think are kind of money grabs. That case is actually pretty good.
Case is great.
That case is great. Well, the only thing is that when the foam is slightly bigger than the tray, because when it closes, that foam compresses and it locks everything into place. If you have a lot of like bendy, pointy stuff like Admech or Dark Eldar or the Void Dragon, all that stuff is going to get snapped. So there's certain armies that do not travel well with it. But Death Guard are pretty large and chunky. I had a lot of stuff. I didn't feel like magnetizing all of it, so I literally just put all the vehicles on the bottom, kind of shoved them in there, and then just put all the Terminators and Nurglings and the Plague Marines, kind of shoved them in there and just slammed it all together. And they don't move. That is probably one of the best cases to fly with, and it fits. The biggest thing is don't bring those oversized cases, because they will force you to. If you bring an oversized case, they're going to force you to gate check it a lot of times, and you get to sit there. You get to sit there and watch out the window as one of the ramp handlers just like spikes your tray or your army case onto the conveyor belt, and you're just going to be sad. Yeah. So,
if you can, it can seem quite tedious, but like magnetizing your models will save a lot of them. Like all my jet bikes are magnet. Like the spear comes off, like that's magnetized at shoulder. Eliminates any problems associated with the spear snapping, because you just stick them at the bottom of the foam and you're good to go. All my knights, if you're watching on YouTube later, like this is one of my knights. This whole thing pops off. His hand pops off. His arm pops off. Like if you can put all those things off and stick them in a bag and stick that bag in some foam, like again, you're good to go. Along with that, bring some glue and other repair goodies with you. Because even just over the course of playing the game, some of the stuff can get snapped off, and you want to be able to fix it real quick. So,
So yeah, that's the biggest thing. I would also, if you really, really, really want to ensure that your army traveling experience is low stress, if you can pick your seats, I would pick a seat. This is obviously more for nonstop flights, because this is not a good idea if you have a tight connection to catch. But I recommend sitting near the back of the plane, because a lot of people, when they get on the plane, they load their bags up near the front and then they continue walking to their seats. And so if you're sitting in the so if you're sitting in the front, like you're going to be, all of a sudden you're not going to have a spot to put your bag. And if your bag doesn't fit under the seat, like now you got to go backwards. Or they might, if you're one of the last, if you're like on like group E or F or whatever, you're one of the last people to board the plane, and you all of a sudden can't find a spot for your bag and it doesn't fit under the seat, guess what? They're going to ask you to gate check it, and your stuff is going to be broken when it gets there. So I really recommend, if you can pick your seats, pick something towards the back, because the back tends to get loaded. Back tends to stay emptier for longer than the front, because they load all the business class people in front. So if you pick the back, you tend to be able to to get first dibs on space. And then it's also worth it, if you can afford it, to spend like a little bit of extra cash to get the early boarding. So if you pick a seat in the back and you have early boarding, you should never have to check your bag unless you're on like absolutely the most jam-packed flight imaginable. So that's kind of like been my trick, and I fly a lot, and it's worked for me every time.
Alternatively, when you see someone shit where yours is supposed to go, you look at it and you pull it out and you say, whose bag is this? And why is it here? And when no one answers, you say, okay, and then you move it somewhere else.
I like that idea too. That's pretty funny. I would do that, but I'm also a big guy, so it's kind of funny.
You can also ask. You can ask one of the flight attendants; they'll help you out too. And be like, "Hey, I don't know why this is here or how it happened." Like, typically they'll move stuff over.
If that happens to you and you call people like out like that, like flight attendants love backing people up who are like doing what they're supposed to do versus like people who are like being assholes, basically. So, also the last thing would be, you are allowed, most airlines, you're allowed one carry-on item and one personal item. And people a lot of times don't really think about what that means. The carry-on items can be bigger than you think they are, and so can personal items. Most people, when they think of a carry-on, the size they're thinking is actually the size of your personal item. Your personal item could be as big as like a laptop bag or like a briefcase or something like that. So I have two. So in addition to the Citadel case, I have two battle foam cases. I have a battle foam 216, which is like briefcase size, and it could easily hold 1,000 points of like just pure infantry, easily. And then I have the battle foam, I think like the 420 or something. It's like 4 something or whatever. That's like the normal size, like medium sized case. I rarely bring both of them, but if I have a larger army, if you bring both of them, that's your carry-on and your personal item, and that should be able to hold most armies in the game, even like the largest armies, because you put all your vehicles and your monsters and your big stuff in the big bag, and you put whatever else you can fit in there, and then you just cram all your infantry into the 216, and then you put the bigger bag underneath the seat in front of you, and then your personal item, which would be the Battle Foam 216, which is briefcase size. That is even the most crowded flights, that's very easy to find room in the overhead. Usually if you just squish some bags, you can just slide it right in there. So if you have like a larger army, that's probably what I would do. But that's most of the stress, I think, of traveling, is just making sure your army gets there in one piece and doesn't get destroyed in transit.
Make sure it doesn't. That's it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like what other stuff that other travel tips that I'm probably taking for granted and forgetting to mention.
Well, to get access to that first boarding, right? Like if you get access to a given airport's or a given airline's credit card, that usually comes with like, oh, you get automatic priority boarding or group 1 boarding.
Yeah,
you'll be one of the first people on. That's good. You'll typically get a free checked bag. That's also good because you can check your clothes or whatever.
I feel like once we start getting into like the recommending like airlines and hotels like credit cards, we're getting almost like to like the expert or like pro level of traveling. If you won't travel a lot, that might not be like feasible for you.
In general, a phone case is just a good thing to have, though. You should have a phone case to transport your minis. They're good.
Yeah, phone case is really good. If you start traveling more and more often, we're actually planning to do this. Miami Dice is going to send a team to the Champions Cup in Dallas in September. We are actually going to. I'm kind of taking the lead on this. AKA, I'm fronting the money, and then I'm going to like break people's kneecaps so they don't pay me back. But basically, we are. Instead of doing hotels, instead of doing Ubers, instead of going out and eating at like, expensive hotel food, because if you're in a typical hotel or a casino, LVO, and you eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the hotel, it's very easy to spend $100 on food in a single day without leaving the hotel, and it's not even particularly good food. So what we're doing is, since it's 8 of us, possibly 9 if we get a coach, we are going to rent a 15-passenger van. We are going to rent a 10-person Airbnb, aka a mansion. And then this is in Plano, Texas. So like the Airbnb, even big Airbnbs are cheap. It'll be $2,000 for 4 days, but that's split among 8 people.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's like $60 a night.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna take like probably about like we're all gonna chip in. We're gonna try to get about $350, and we're gonna use that to like stock the fridge of the Airbnb with like good food, booze, kits to make lunch for people, like to take to the venue, so that way they don't have to like they're not stuck with like lines and whatever overpriced crap the venue is pushing. And there's a real kind of like strength and return on investment in numbers when you go to events. So if you can get like that's why teams are awesome. Because even if you get a crew, it's huge. Like even if you have one person to split a hotel with, kind of be your backup, whatever, it makes traveling way less stressful. But if you can get like a whole crew or whole team going, it just gets so much better. And that's kind of like where tournaments really come into their own, is when you start rolling up with a crew. Tournaments get way more fun. It's also cheaper. Okay, last question from Ethan. I need both your honest opinions on this list, hot or not. And he lists Hypercrypt Legion with looks like Nightbringer, Hexmark Destroyer, Locust Lord with the Res Orb, Arisen Tyrant. I have no idea what that does. The new Overlord with Translocation Shroud. That guy's good. Silent King, Death Marks, Doomside, Locust Destroyer, Locust Heavy Destroyer, Lich Guard, Tomb Blades. You probably know more about Necrons than I do, so I'm gonna defer to you in this. But like, I wasn't super impressed with the Silent King in the new book. I just don't think I don't think he has enough keywords. I just don't think he does enough. I think that could be 420 points of more shooting and more mission play.
Yeah.
I do like the Locust Destroyers and Locust Heavy Destroyers. My immediate reaction is to cut the Silent King and turn that 420 points into more Locust Destroyers and Locust Heavy Destroyers. Because just bouncing around the board 3 units a turn, that's my immediate thought is I want more Locust Destroyers, more shooting.
So it's cute because Hypercrypt makes a bunch of weird stuff like potentially viable, because you're like, oh cool, like I can pick up the Silent King and put him somewhere else on the board.
I feel like that's going to end up being like a bait for most people, though. They're going to end up putting the Silent King like somewhere really dumb and like losing them turn 2.
Yeah. I'm more intrigued. I know, Ethan, you talked about this a little bit in Discord. Like I'm with Tim on the Silent King might be. There are better ways to spend those points. I'm into the Enminic Destroyer bomb you've got set up here. Like that's just like going to be 36 shots sustained. Rerolling all your hits. That's going to be cool. I'm a little weirded out by the Doom sides. But you also have like a rationale for it when we talked about it, which is like, I'm going to drop these in wherever. They're going to get angles. It's big anti-vehicle firepower. And like, I can throw a 4-up on the one that gets targeted. I'm like, all right, cool. Like, that's not bad. That's way more utility than they would have in any other detachment.
Yeah, I reserved my judgment on them because I had no idea what they did. Although my eyeballs kind of popped out of my head a little bit when I saw their 230 points at least.
Very expensive.
Those are very expensive.
But so much of the stuff, you know, like Hexmark Destroyers, for example, you're like, are these good? You're like, it's a loan out that you can put anywhere you want on the board for the entire game, occasionally within 3 inches using Inceptor rules. Like that's
Does he not have it? Oh, he has one. He has one. Yeah. What does Dimensional Overseer do?
One sec.
I don't know what any of these enhancements do.
Oh boy. So Dimensional Overseer is you can add one. So typically in Hypercrypt in 2,000 points, you can take 3 of any of your Necron units and throw them into the hyperphasing space. That lets you add one more. So you do 4, which might be overkill, but
I like that.
From there, so
I like that.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'll be honest. I kind of like the idea of having 3 of those Hexmark Destroyers, at least 2. One feels like not enough. I think in Hypercrypt, I feel like I'd want another one.
Yeah, they're just. I mean, it's Sheep Khaled is slightly tougher.
Yeah. I'm also, again, I grain of salt. I do not play Necrons. I play against Necrons a fairly decent amount. I've talked to people who play Necrons, but like this is just everything I know about Necrons is like via osmosis.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that I have never not liked Locust Destroyers and Locust Heavy Destroyers, and I feel when I'm thinking about playing into this new book, I think I am most scared of this detachment. Just putting Locust Destroyers and Locust Heavy Destroyers in angles where I can't quickly get enough guns to bear on them. They're getting angles on stuff that I don't want them shooting at, and they're out of range of my melee to get to them. And if I try to get to them, they'll just leave, and now I have melee units exposed and out of position.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the idea of leaning into that. So another Hexmark Destroyer, more Locusts of all types. I like how you like the singles, but I would also like to see probably like a bigger unit because that unit does shoot hard, and not having a bigger unit does feel a little bit like a waste. Let us know how the Doom size go, but man, that is 460 points in 2 models, and I feel like that leaves you a very thin margin of error. Like where if they don't do enough stuff, or if you misplay them and you lose them, like you're going to be between that and the Silent King, like you're going to be in a real tough spot. That's 880 points between 3 models.
I think it would be, I mean, like maybe you're thinking like, oh, it's cool. I can reposition the Doom size, buy the Silent King, and get rerolls on these big guns, but that's a huge amount of table space. That's like not necessarily even going to be possible in a lot of scenarios. So
yeah. Also, I feel like this detachment really wants to spread out and play the board, which is a real push pull to like generally how you want to use the Silent King.
Yeah.
Like I know he can hop around, that is cool, but man, he really wants to be active in both. He wants to be active in like in the command phase, shooting phase, and fight phase, to really get his like your use out of him. And I feel like that's going to be hard to do in this detachment. Also, I just don't think his data sheet translated very well into the new book. Personally, I could be proven wrong about it because I'm far from the Necron expert. But
like, I don't know. Like, would you rather have the Silent King or 20 warriors with the, let's be extra trolly, 20 warriors with the Technomancer, with the Osteoclave Fulcrum, giving them deep strike? You stick them on the table turn 1, you pick them up turn 1 in Hypercrypt, you put them down wherever you want, possibly within 3 inches of the enemy, you hit a bunch of objectives at the same time, and like hard move block somebody with 20 T4, 4 up, 5 up field no pain saves. And have like, 100 something points, 150, 160 points left over. And all this other stuff. I don't know. Silent King, I'm not super into it. This Legion.
Yeah,
I like run it because I want to know what happens, but like I don't think I would do it.
Yeah, I definitely feel like this detachment, and like I said, this book is far from solved, but this type of hypermobile, like bouncing around archetype, like it really wants to play the entire board and try to like spread out the opponent's army, but you also want a couple hammer units to like quickly obliterate those overcommitments that are out of position that your opponent is forced to do to stop you from scoring so many points. So I do like the one Locust Heavy Destroyer brick, but I think you need at least one more big damage dealing brick, whether it's a Locust brick or something else. I do like the Nightbringer. That guy is really good, and I think he's going to provide a really nice anchor to the style list where he just basically picks a section of the board. He's like, the rest of the army is bouncing around doing stuff, but this section of the board is mine.
Mm-hmm.
He's very if the Nightbringer is trying to come towards your opponent, the Nightbringer is very easy to play around. But if he is picking a very vital area of the battlefield and just sitting there, and he's like, you have to come into and or through me, that is actually like can be a little bit rough.
Yeah.
So
there's also just like, again, the mobility plays, right? Like you pick him up turn 2.
Can the Nightbringer be picked up?
Yeah, it's like it's any of the Necron units.
Any of them, really. Even the Catan, that's crazy.
attachment's fucking bananas. Like I think I really, it's gonna be like John's Vanguard list with Ultramarines, except everything has.
I could definitely see like fun stuff where you pick up the Nightbringer, and then the next turn you immediately like rapid ingress them in. You know, like there's definitely some cool stuff I can see people doing there.
Yeah. And you can do the 3-inch deep strike with it from turn 2 onward. Like at least that's my understanding of the rules. It's gonna be.
I could see. I know people are a little bit down on him, but I could actually see the Deceiver being pretty cool on this list because he has the redeploy. Now, granted, it's the bad redeploy, but like still, you can still kind of like there's still even the bad redeploy is still redeploy. And there's definitely like you could definitely use that, and then like a redeploy combined with picking stuff up at your opponent's turn, and then like the play of like rapid ingress afterwards is huge. And he also has stealth, and then he has more OC. I think the other Satan are OC4, and he's like OC6 or something like that. So there's definitely some plays there.
Yeah. This book is it's deep. It really is.
I think it's a good book, man. I think it's gonna be cool. Like I said, I'll borrow Necrons if I want to play them, but I'm not planning to play them. But I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what people do.
Same.
All right, man. I think that was all the questions. I didn't see any in chat. It looks like we pretty much went through everything. Nice, easy holiday show.
Hey.
The next show is going to be sometime in January. It should be like right before I get ready to travel to Nottingham, so that'll be fun.
That'll be money.
It'll be a lot of fun. And then immediately post Nottingham, I changed schedule, so we might have to mess around with time slots, whatever. But we'll see.
Word.
We'll figure it out. That's 2024 Tim and Cliff problems. So, all right, man. You got any parting shots for us?
You know, hit us up on Patreon, follow us on YouTube, subscribe, like, hit the comments. Y'all are already in the comments in the conversation. Appreciate you for watching. If you're podcasting or watching it back on YouTube, hi. Thanks for checking in. See you in Discord. Keep playing. Keep painting. Game's headed toward a better spot. GW, please save Knights and Custodes, my favorites. Tim, what do you got?
All right, guys. I don't really have anything. Everyone out there, just happy holidays. Grant, we're thinking about you. If you ever need to talk to us, you can reach out to Cliff or I directly. Everyone else, happy holidays. Go spend time with your family or friends or whoever sparks joy. Paint some minis, play some games, and we will see you in the Discord.
Great holiday. Great New Year, y'all. Bye.